Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Wednesday, July 24th, 2024. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Jennifer Berkshire, freelance journalist, co-host of the Have You Heard podcast, author of The Education Wars, Citizen's Guide and Defense Manual, co-authored with Jack Schneider. Talk to her about what Democrats are doing in terms of education and maybe what we can anticipate from Kamala Harris. Meanwhile, at least 86 Democratic lawmakers to boycott accused war criminal Bibi Netanyahu's speech in front of Congress today. Harris campaign begins in earnest, with polling already showing she's gaining ground. In response, Republican lawmakers meet, and leadership begs them to try and not be overtly racist and misogynist in response.
Good luck.
Monday was the hottest day on Earth, which broke the previous record set on Sunday of this week. Joe Biden to address the nation tonight at 8 p.m. if he's actually still alive. I should have got on that. Darn it. 7 major unions call on Biden to halt military aid to Israel as Dropsite News reports a UN leaked report shows that Israel has killed 366 UN workers and family members in Gaza. Elon Musk denies he's giving $45 million to Trump. Maybe it has something to do with J.D. Vance being the least popular VP pick in modern history. Maybe ever.
Oh, so good.
New Jersey Senator Menendez to resign in disgrace, but he's going to take 3 weeks to do it. Federal judge allows the FTC non-compete ban to go forward. Speaking of the FTC, they opened a surveillance pricing inquiry based upon the American Prospects reporting that we were discussing a couple of weeks ago. Elizabeth Warren to offer a bill that will essentially overturn the Supreme Court's attack on the Chevron doctrine. All this and more on today's Majority Report. God bless you.
Thank you. Woo. Just in time.
It is
Hump day.
Hump day. That's right.
Yes. Sorry about that, folks.
Sneeze day.
Now I got to leave the building.
People really don't want you to be sneezing or eating or doing anything like that.
I don't eat. I don't eat on camera.
All right.
That's
I mean,
a
if you say
thing.
so.
Yeah, we'll see.
We got a lot to get to today, folks. And we've been wanting to talk to Jennifer Berkshire for about 2.5 weeks. And sometimes it's hard to anticipate how much news you're going to have in the middle of the summer. But it has been a little bit more than we anticipated. Nevertheless, let's start with this. There are boycotts. And we could be up to more than 86 at this point in terms of lawmakers, all Democratic lawmakers, we should say, who are boycotting Netanyahu's speech. You can imagine who some of those are in the House. I'm happy to report that well, he's not my congressman, but he's from Worcester. Jim McGovern not going. Of course, the squad members not going.
Bernie, Warren in the Senate. There is one Republican, Thomas Massey.
I was going to say, is Massey?
Apologies. Yes. Massey will not be going. Mark Takano. I mean, there's many, many more, obviously. In terms of the senators who aren't going to be attending, Bernie, Warren, Murray. We have
Merkley,
three. Berkeley, Merkley,
Van Hollen.
Van Hollen, and who's the sixth? I mean, I imagine Tim Kaine is also not going. He actually boycotted the last time that Netanyahu came, to his credit. So, this is something that was predictable, and I think we're going to continue to see. Look, Kamala Harris does not have a particularly dissentful record when it comes to Israel. She has spoken in front of AIPAC many times. She received a good amount of donations from AIPAC. She has said in the past that she's a stalwart supporter of Israel. I don't know what is in Kamala Harris's heart about Israel. But I do know that Joe Biden is about as bad as you can get on Israel and be a Democrat, A. And B, if Bibi Netanyahu had spoken in front of Congress in September of 2023, you would not have 68 Democrats, 86, 68? I can't remember now.
86.
86. Democrats boycotting the speech. So the politics around Israel have changed dramatically. We have seen Israel kill, a minimum of 40,000 Palestinians in Gaza. The number ultimately is going to be far more. We have that Lancet study that anticipates that anywhere from 150,000 to 250,000 civilians in Gaza will be dead after this. It could be more. We know that there's polio running, that they're finding in wastewater now, that nearly 400,000 had to again literally run out of Khan Yunis. Some of the images and the videos are just horrifying.
They gave them minutes, and they're just shuffling this population around and by giving them minutes before saying, like, hey, we're going to bomb or we're going to open fire. And terrorizing them. So that's part of the point, too, is to not just kill as many Palestinians as they can. It's also to strike fear and trauma in the hearts of people.
Extinguish hope.
Without a doubt. And I've seen interviews with doctors who have gone over there talking about small children with multiple sniper fires, and doctors who have been in war zones who say, I've never seen anything like this at all. Just a absolute horror show what has been done to the people of Gaza, and so I can't say with any confidence that Kamala Harris is going to make any meaningful changes to our policy in regards to Israel. I don't think anybody can make that statement right now. I feel pretty confident in saying that I don't think that she is going to be as bad as Biden.
Well, Biden was uniquely horrible. Like, I want people to understand that Peter Beinart wrote in 2020, because this question was asked before, obviously, the active genocide began, if conditioning aid to Israel was, it was when the debates were between, I think, Sanders, Warren, and Buttigieg and Biden at the time. And Biden was the only one who said he wouldn't condition aid to Israel. And he has a long record of ideological Zionism and being maybe the most pro-Israel Democratic senator in D.C. So, with her
he embarrassed Menachem Begin.
Yeah.
If you believe Begin, I mean, he embarrassed Menachem Begin with how bloodthirsty he was relative to Israel's, in this case, it was the assault in Lebanon.
And just call me like on hopium or whatever, but the fact that she was the first administration official to call for a ceasefire on the Edmund Pettus Bridge and then had to walk it back because they edited her speech, the fact that she was leaking to the press, trying to distance herself from the president's policy, which is very difficult to do as VP, saying she was more sympathetic to the Palestinians. I've spoken to at least one person who had previously worked in the administration who says the consensus among people in the State Department of the people who've been critical is that she'll be more sympathetic. The point is that there's nowhere to go but up. And I also think Obama experienced this a bit with Netanyahu because he's such an obvious racist, and when you just interact with him, there's like being a person of color, I think there's a different relationship where you can see Zionism as racism in the way that it is. And there's a reason that the first 24 or so members of the House to call for a ceasefire were all POC. So I'm not saying you could be a Richie Torres too, but I do think there's a fundamental difference in people's experiences, especially when Harris, came from parents who were both immigrants, and her mother talks about the experience of colonialism in India, versus Biden, who romanticizes America, romanticizes Israel. It's just different ideologically, in my view.
I mean, I remember that reminds me when Peter Beinart was on the program and said, if you really want to know where someone stands on this, a very good proxy is like the 1619 Project. But that aside, too, we should also say that Kamala Harris's chief foreign policy advisor was a close advisor of Obama's, who was the biggest proponent of the Iran nuclear deal, which was in my estimation, Obama's biggest achievement in foreign policy.
Agreed.
And so there is, by thy advisor, one can sometimes divine where they're going. So we'll see. But in the meantime, people are protesting Bibi Netanyahu. He was staying at, was it the Watergate Hotel last night?
Yep.
And apparently he had to change rooms because of this.
Projected his face.
Arrest
Projected
Netanyahu.
his face, arrest Netanyahu on the hotel.
Greg Stoker, I think, shot that friend of the show. Shot that video. Yeah, so credit to him.
Let's also, this is the protest that they're seeing today. This is out on the mall, right? Is that right? The Washington Monument Mall.
And we should say that hundreds of Jewish Voice for Peace activists, I think, were arrested yesterday at the Capitol.
Stop arming Israel now! Stop arming Israel now!
So people are out there and, protesting Netanyahu. I should also just add, before we sort of switch gears here, that Biden's going to be on television tonight at 8 p.m. I mean, if you actually believe that it's really Biden and not some guy in a mask, as a lot of the people on the right wing are claiming.
Including the dental assistant who cleaned my teeth yesterday, asked me if Biden was really dead. She's heard he's been dead for months. I said, I'm not sure.
Clean my teeth and I'll tell you.
Well, regardless, the AI version of Biden that's going to be on your TVs tonight, it will be, we'll get an indication. I find it hard to believe that he's giving this speech on the day that Netanyahu speaks, and he won't address this. I mean, it's largely going to be, about, I would imagine, and I haven't seen any reporting on this, but I would imagine about what he intends to complete in his the final months. Well, one of those may be, he thinks he can forge Middle East peace in some fashion. We'll see. But so we'll have a better sense of this. And tomorrow, Emma's going to be doing one of her interviews. Is going to be on the situation as well. So stay tuned. We will obviously be talking about Bibi's speech in front of Congress. My understanding is that Mike Johnson has said very explicitly, zero tolerance for protests in the House.
How about free speech, buddy?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I just want to shout out my favorite Congresswoman, Rashida Tlaib, quote yesterday on Twitter: Netanyahu is a war criminal committing genocide against the Palestinian people. It is utterly disgraceful that leaders from both parties have invited him to address Congress. He should be arrested and sent to the International Criminal Court. That's my favorite statement on the matter so far.
Good job by her. And with all my more optimism about the direction Harris could go versus Biden in at least a marginally better direction, Rashida Tlaib and the uncommitted movement will be, and it's good that they're going to try to leverage this moment before the convention to get more concessions. I'm also deeply encouraged by seeing the fact that the UAW, other major unions, the SEIU, which has close ties to Harris, all signed a letter yesterday saying that we should stop sending weapons to Israel. So that is an indication hey, Harris, you got to be responsive to us here.
Yep.
And let me just add, F. Chuck Schumer. I have had problems with him for years, but this is really disgraceful and pathetic. Chuck Schumer was calling for his dismissal as prime minister as recently as January, I believe it was, in some attempt to, I don't know what he was attempting to do. And Chuck Schumer, I guess he's up for re-election. Probably another 2 years? Is it, Bradley, or is it another 4? I think it's 2.
Let me double
I think
check.
4 because I think it's a
4.
little bit of a longer runway. That's some of the speculation about AOC, right? If she could be angling.
We got the get the checkout banner still.
Still, looking at it.
Is that from 2020?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, that means that he's running again in 2 years, in 2026.
I'm seeing that he's up until 28 actually.
Well, regardless.
Oh, wow.
I
well,
can't
that's what
wait.
I'm saying. I think that's
can't
what
wait
AOC
to
is angling
volunteer
for.
in that campaign. I may have to take a leave of absence, unless he has a pair of handcuffs in his pocket, and when Netanyahu looks to shake his hand, he slaps the cuffs on him, and that's about it.
Oh,
that's my dream.
The Baileys aren't answering their phone anymore.
Psych.
That's right. Next time the Baileys call, I'll answer. All right, let's just briefly get into this, because I heard this morning. As I've said for quite a time, I listen to the AP at the morning, top of the hour, bottom of the hour news, just to get a sense of what normies are hearing. And we have this clip from the AP. Which is just amazing. One of the things that we were saying in the run up to, before Biden actually dropped out, was that what would work in Harris's favor is that the truncated period of time in which they would campaign against Harris, they would all immediately, the Republicans, would not be able to help themselves in saying DEI candidate, racist or misogynist things, and that with a 24-month or 18-month campaign, they could exercise that and get that out of their system in the first couple of months, and then figure out some nuanced way of saying the same thing, but to shroud it a little bit more. Well, they didn't have time to do that, and this is what the AP reported this morning.
Focus on Vice President and now presidential candidate Kamala Harris. Republican leaders in the House have some advice for lawmakers who plan to talk about her.
At a closed-door meeting of House Republicans, leaders warned party members against using overtly racist and sexist attacks against Vice President Kamala Harris. House Speaker Mike Johnson telling reporters after,
"This is not personal with regard to Kamala Harris, and her ethnicity or her gender have nothing to do with this whatsoever.
Urging lawmakers to stick to criticizing her role in the current administration's policies.
How? Like, the idea that you have to assemble your caucus and say, don't be overtly racist or misogynist.
And it's the number one headline on the 6 a.m. AP headline news.
Oh my God. And the news station, the music station I was listening to, they played it at the top of the hour and the bottom of the hour, the same clip.
Oh my God.
I mean, this is honestly like the only thing I'd say, like going into a room full of like teenagers or young adults and saying, hey guys, listen, just want to remind you, if you go to the bathroom and you happen to get a little poop on your hands, please wash your hands and for God's sakes, don't put it in your mouth. Like, I mean, the idea.
I like how it's teenagers in your example, because that's exactly. Like, they should know this by now.
Exactly.
Like in the way
it's
that
not little kids.
Right. This is not 5-year-olds. Yes.
The idea that they need to go behind closed doors and say, look, reminder, don't be overly racist, please, is just everything you need to know about that party.
I have some behind the scenes.
Donald Trump. This is not Donald Trump. This is the Republican Party.
Here's some more secret audio from Mike Johnson behind closed doors.
See, so this is why you guys don't get invited places.
You have to have real conversations, like how she's a DEI candidate. Oh, shoot. Damn it. I did it again.
All right. In a moment, we're going to be talking to Jennifer Berkshire. She's a journalist and co-host of Have You Heard podcast, author of The Education Wars, Citizen's Guide and Defense Manual, co-authored with Jack Schneider. But speaking of education, you want to know the best way to learn a language? It's immersion. Live where the language is spoken and use it every day. So if you want to learn a language and you want to learn Spanish, move to Spain or move to Mexico. But if you cannot do that, you can still learn a language the second best way, and that is with Babbel. Let me just say this. I don't know if this is an idiom, but vamos, mamala. Right. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Shit.
I wanted to say let's go. I'm picking up phrases, but I don't know if that's I have a feeling that could be an idiom, but I'm not sure. Anyways, Babbel is super easy to use, and it is incredibly effective. Babbel is a science-backed language learning app that actually works. You don't have to pay hundreds of dollars for private tutors. You don't waste hours on apps that don't really help you speak the language. Babbel's got quick 10-minute lessons that apparently are handcrafted by over 200 language experts, and they help you speak a new language in as little as 3 weeks. Babbel's designed by real people for real conversations. Babbel's tips and tools are approachable. They are super accessible. They're rooted in real life situations. You don't go through all of like past pluperfect. No, that's not the way you do it. They are delivered with conversation-based teaching, so you're ready to practice what you've learned in the real world. It's almost like you're immersed for 10 minutes a day. Studies from Yale, Michigan State University, and others continue to prove that Babbel is better. One study found that using Babbel for 15 hours is equivalent to a full semester at college. So I am telling that to Mila, and I'm going to save myself some cash. Babbel has over 16 million subscriptions sold, plus all of Babbel's 14 award-winning language courses are backed by their 20-day money-back guarantee. And here's a special limited time. It's a deal for our listeners right now. Get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for Majority Report listeners at babbel.com/majority. Get up to 60% off at Babbel, BABBEL.com/majority. Again, that's BABBEL.com/majority. Babbel.com/majority. Rules and restrictions apply. Going to take a quick break and head into the fun half. Oh, no, excuse me. Going to take a quick break and we'll come back with Jennifer Berkshire.
Anyway.
I got distracted because someone just IM'd Babel cannot teach users to speak Biden. I don't think it's an available language. It's not nice.
Anyways,
quick break. We'll be right back with Jennifer Berkshire, journalist, co-host of Have You Heard podcast, author of The Education Wars, a citizen's guide and defense manual, co-authored with Jack Schneider. We'll be right back after this. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland on the Majority Report. It is a pleasure to welcome back to the program Jennifer Berkshire, freelance journalist, co-host of Have You Heard podcast, author of The Education Wars, a citizen's guide and defense manual, which she co-authored with Jack Schneider, who we've also had on the program a couple of times. Jennifer, welcome back.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a real honor to be back.
So, and we've talked over the years, and I think I probably first interviewed Jack during the Obama years, maybe even in the first or maybe early second term. There's been so much that's happened with education fights, public education fights, really since the Bush years, in terms of like a concerted assault that took a couple of different sort of like, I guess, a couple of different forms, I should say. And on some level, like it feels like over the past 5 years, really during the Biden administration, and maybe even prior to that, that like the Democrats have sort of like gotten out of the game, as it were, in pushing back on what's happening. It's been very, very strange. I know that's why you wrote the book, but just expand on that and give people a sense of where we're at.
Yeah, because we could identify for folks what the Republicans have been up to over the last several years, and they would recognize instantly the way that, Republicans leapt on an issue like parents' rights, and how they were so convinced after Glenn Youngkin's upset win in Virginia that this was going to be their issue. This was going to be the thing that attracted suburban women back into the fold, right? People recognize that story instantly. And then you ask them, well, gee, what have the Democrats been up to? And the answer is not a whole lot. That, they got very excited during the Obama years, as you mentioned. They went all in on a particular vision of fixing schools. We were going to have a lot more charter schools. We love testing. We were going to evaluate teachers on the basis of their student test scores. And that agenda has really fallen by the wayside, partly because the Republicans have moved so far to the right now. The bipartisan consensus has really fallen apart, but also because the Democrats just don't have a lot to say. And that is actually a big part of why we wrote the book, to try to wake folks up, to say, hey, we have this thing, this public education system that is actually like a real national success story. It's amazing that we provide kids with education K through 12 that they don't have to pay for, that we tax ourselves to make sure everybody gets it. You could never set something up like that that today. Why are you guys, you Democrats, having such a hard time making the case for an institution that's as important as this one?
Well, maybe we could see a shift if Kamala Harris picks someone like Bashir over Shapiro, right? Like those two people are a massive contrast in between the perspectives that you describe.
That is absolutely right. So Bashir is the governor of Kentucky, where private school vouchers are going to be on the ballot in November. Kentuckians will go to the polls to decide whether they want to change their state constitution to allow for taxpayer dollars to go to religious schools. And everywhere this gets put up for a vote, people vote against it. They hate this idea. And so you've got Bashir out there saying, you know, like really positioning himself as a loud advocate for public schools because he recognizes that it's good politics. He recognizes that his state, which is very rural, has staunch supporters of public schools, even in its reddest counties. And then you contrast that with Governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, who's the only Democratic governor to be a voucher supporter. And honestly, to come out with a position like that right now, when we can look at these states where Republicans are enacting these sweeping school voucher programs that don't do any of the things that we've been promised over the last couple decades, that it turns out not to have anything to do with kids in quote unquote failing schools or the civil rights issue of our time. What they're doing is they're picking up the tab for parents who already send their kids to private schools, affluent parents, and they're blowing up their state budgets in the meantime. So I would be so sad to see somebody like a Shapiro picked, not just because I think that school vouchers are a terrible issue, but because they're really, you know, they have the potential to rally folks across party lines. And how stupid of the Democrats if they were to give up on that opportunity.
All right. Before we get into like, you know, that, I want to go back though first, because I want to give like a sense of like where we have been, why the Democrats have disengaged in this, and what the sort of the fundamental underlying importance of public education is. And people should remember that really, you know, public education wasn't invented in Reconstruction, but it was really established as a federal sort of project in Reconstruction because of the understanding that having a public education system was crucial to creating equality and to creating the sort of like the fundamental aspects of citizenship in our country. I mean, it's no coincidence that it was a Reconstruction project. And so I know that is like sort of like what has been missing on some level from this conversation. I want to circle back that, but could you just like briefly walk us through? We had No Child Left Behind, then we had Race to the Top, which was aided and abetted by the Obama administration, this sort of like corporate education reform, not to a large extent sort of accelerated by the Gates Foundation. And then they found out that it didn't work by their own Rand Corporation report, that their whole project was a mistake. They should have listened. But we had a generation or two of teachers who were brought in, and one generation completely demoralized, it seems, and a new generation that was brought in without any sort of like foundational appreciation of what I think public education was about. Can you walk us through some of that history?
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. And I think it's so important for people to realize that all the policies that you just laid out very clearly there, they're all still on the books in all of these states. So you have a lot of places right now where teachers are dealing with the intense culture war stuff from the right, while at the same time, they're still under the kind of, you know, the gun of No Child Left Behind, and then the ratcheting up of that from the Obama administration, which was basically to say, you know, we're going to hold you, teacher, accountable for student test scores. And then, you know, during that whole long period between George W. Bush and Obama, the way that we came to understand public schools and their function in society drastically narrowed. And so those really important words that we heard from you, Sam, things like equality and citizenship, those were never mentioned. Instead, it was all about college and career, and we were going to define school and whether it was good or not on the basis of whether or not it raised student test scores. And so you fast forward to the present, and the reason that the campaign on the right to dismantle public schools, to defund them, to move as many kids as possible into private religious schools, it has nothing to do with test scores or teacher evaluations at all. In fact, one of the truly astonishing things about these huge voucher programs that Republicans are setting up in all of these states, and we're about to reach our 12th state where one of these programs is on the books now, that these programs actually make it impossible to track the performance of students in schools. That's how we know that all the rhetoric around student achievement turned out that really wasn't what people cared about, particularly on the right. And so you see this sort of full frontal attack on public schools. And I think what Jack and I are so concerned about is that we have a very short window of time to remind people that what you were talking about, Sam, the fact that we have public education in this country in the first place because of that vision of equality, right? And it's why we're so often disappointed in schools, because we hope so fervently that they're going to make the country a more equal place. And we can talk about why that's so difficult, but having an entire party that has forgotten the role of schools in preparing kids for citizenship, forgotten that they're a pillar of our democracy. So I'm here today, and I think you are here today to try to wake them up to that reality.
Yeah, I think this is so fundamentally misunderstood, I think. And it's very much, I mean, look, this is one of the most sort of like late stage capitalist sort of, I think, phenomena that we have, which is where education is reduced to being strictly a something that you can measure in terms of return on investment in dollars, as opposed to like social cohesion, citizenship, community, all of these other things that an education was supposed to, mobility, just in terms of not just like economic mobility, but just sort of being able to meet other people and express ideas, and all of this seems to have been lost. And it's fascinating to me, the dynamic between, you have these right wingers who fundamentally despise public education because of this. I mean, it goes back. You can just see all this stuff play out in Reconstruction. They do not want, what was an underclass at that time to have the ability to sort of like say, like, wait, these are my rights. This is what I am, an equal part of society, et cetera, et cetera. You have that on the right. And then you have the sort of the neoliberal agenda, which supposedly is going to maximize this return on investment, measured by the same way that you would measure an investment if it was corporate. They go in there, and what they do is they basically till up the ground and destroy that connection, that mental connection between what public education is supposed to be. It's supposed to be to develop good citizens. That goes by the wayside. So all you have left is this like husk. And then Betsy DeVos comes in, and talk about Betsy DeVos, because you say, I think the chapter is, okay, it's not, well, I don't know exactly which chapter it was, but the idea that like, they don't have a problem with public education, but they have a problem with public schools. Like Betsy DeVos and her husband were big on this. They want that dumb money. They just want it to go different places.
Yeah, people have forgotten about Betsy DeVos because, she stepped down towards the end of Trump's term, and then we didn't hear much from her. But she is an enormous bankroller of all of the stuff that's playing out in red states right now. And so there was some terrific CNN reporting that her group has spent something like $250 billion with a B, dollars on trying to get these voucher programs through with great success. And I think the point you make is so good because, you know, the Democrats who were very keen on something like school choice, folks like Cory Booker, for example, or even Barack Obama, they really believed that we had, you know, that the end goal was something like public charter schools, that, you know, we would fund them with our tax dollars, and then we would be so impressed by the fact that they were able to raise student test scores, and that would be it. And of course, that wasn't it at all. The end goal for folks like Betsy DeVos, it's not even just to move funds from public school to private religious schools. It's to completely redefine education so that it's divorced from any place at all. They use the expression unbundling all the time, the way that we're now supposed to unbundle from our cable companies and just stream stuff. And so that's the idea, that's the vision for schooling, that your parents would just buy stuff on Amazon and call it school. And think about what an alienating existence that is. Think about all of the problems we face right now that absolutely demand a collective solution. And here you are rolling through these policies that are intended to defund schools, even in rural communities where public schools, as we all know, are the central public institution.
Right. And also, I would say that that's a big motivation for the right in cutting into school lunches, cutting arts and after school programs, but also saying like, hey, you've got to pay for your lunch. And this should not be a institution for the community where kids can go and be a part of a community and learn from one another. We want to make this as threadbare as possible so that perhaps alternatives look better. I mean, this is just classic austerity politics at the end of the day.
I think that that's a key observation. And then the other thing that I would really encourage folks to do is to pay attention to how you see these policies all being enacted together. It is no coincidence at all that the same states that now have sweeping school voucher policies on the books are also rolling back protections for child workers. They're also saying that we're not going to participate in the federal school lunch program. You know, we're not going to pay for all kids to have school lunch. And so I think the question that we have to ask is, how do the folks who are enacting these policies, how do they see the world? And I think that our sort of logical conclusion is always that, well, they're interested in making more money. You know, Betsy DeVos and her ilk see this as an opportunity to cash in. But we argue in the book that it's actually something much more fundamental, that these folks look around and they see hierarchy and inequality as the natural state of the world. And something that works against that, like public education, fully funded schools where kids get to learn all kinds of stuff, that works against the natural state of things. And as they see it, you know, there are just some kids who were meant to go into the bean fields or the factories or the mines. And so doesn't it just make a lot of sense then to start dismantling the institution, the main institution we have in this country that says, you kid can be whatever you want to be?
I mean, there's Paul Wolfowitz famously got in front of Congress in describing why they went after Iraq. And they said weapons of mass destruction was the thing we could all agree on. And that sort of feels like the assault on education. For Betsy DeVos, if she had the ability, just like the government will function to collect the taxes, and then we will take that money and we will fund basically, you know, what they would call in Pakistan madrasas, religious schools. And, you know, then some of the wealthy people would also, I mean, let's talk about the voucher program, the reality of vouchers. And then we could talk about charters. But the reality of vouchers is that in every place it's been employed, and to the extent that there's been any accountability, people have found that the number of students who are actually going to secular private schools is incredibly low for the first time. In other words, they were already going. This is a subsidy to rich people to go to that private school. There has been some people who go for the first time to like religious schools, but the number of people who it's actually like supposedly what's sold on, like we're going to give real choice, that's not happening.
No, it's not happening at all. And that's, like these programs make it very difficult to track where the money's going, but we do have access to that data. And in state after state, the statistics are staggering. 75%, 80%, and even states that have had voucher programs on the books for a long time, a state like Indiana or Ohio, over time, you see the percentages of kids who are, say, kids of color or low-income kids, their participation in these programs is dropping, and the folks who are more likely to participate are getting wealthier. And actually, the statistics you cited about it's not secular private schools. That there are very few secular private schools in this country. This money
and
is
you're not
going,
getting into them with the $2,000 or $5,000 that you're getting from the voucher.
It is not going to pay for Phillips Exeter Academy. Instead, the money is going to pay the tuition for private religious schools for parents who already send their kids to those schools. Why does that matter? Because the folks who are proponents of this vision understand that it is now going to be next to impossible to take that benefit away. So suddenly you have not only a new lobby group in these states, but they are a lobby group of affluent parents with influence. And so you look at a state like Arizona, where their voucher program is turning out to be unbelievably expensive, close to now $1 billion a year. Not only is it cutting into school funding, public school funding, but it's forcing Arizona policymakers to make cuts to other programs, like, for example, water infrastructure. Can you imagine? It's 115 degrees in Arizona on a good day, and you are now cutting investment in water infrastructure so that you can pick up the tab for parents who already sent their kids to private religious schools. It makes no sense unless you have a real kind of a grim vision where we're all sort of fighting against each other for scraps.
Let's talk about charter schools too, in terms of the way they impact. I mean, it's been some time, but certainly in the run up to 2016, I spent a lot of time interviewing people about charter schools. One of the guys who had embedded himself at one of the Success Academy from like the Manhattan Institute, I can't remember his name at the moment, but by the end of the interview, I had him, even he, who was, and we should say, a charter school started off, it was an idea by the unions, his name escapes me at the moment, as a way of piloting what could be essentially laboratories where we could integrate certain teaching techniques or organizational techniques into the schools. That went by the wayside because it was hijacked. And this guy interviewed from the Manhattan Institute by the end was willing to admit that, like, well, they're not necessarily cherry picking the students, they're cherry picking the parents by basically creating, filters, if you will. You got to be here at 9 a.m., for a meeting, and it's absolutely mandatory. Well, that signifies that somebody's got, either the ability to get off their work at the time, more work flexibility, more money, or more sort of social resources where somebody can, watch the kid, or they can, whatever it is, they cherry pick parents. So the data shows that, some charter schools are better, some are worse than than the average. Exactly the same as public schools, essentially, except for there's also a lot of fraud that happens in charters because depending on which state, the way they set it up. But talk about how this is also sort of like a similar, sort of almost like parallel way of creating a cleave between this idea of what schools are supposed to be about, what public schools are supposed to be about, and this idea of like everybody wanting people to get a good education.
Yeah, well, so I know exactly who you're talking about. The gentleman's name is Robert Pondiscio, and he's actually at the American Enterprise Institute. And that he wrote a book about Success Academy, which is a very successful and very popular charter school in New York. And what's telling about that example is that gentleman is now advising the very controversial Commissioner of Education in Oklahoma, who I'm sure you're familiar with, Ryan Walters.
Oh, you gotta be kidding
He's
me.
advising him on overhauling the social studies curriculum. He was just named to a high-flying commission along with some other famous names. One of them, Dennis Prager, the founder of PragerU, and Kevin Roberts from Heritage, who is all over Project 2025. And I think in many ways that shows you what has happened to the bipartisan coalition that was so enthusiastic about charter schools. The coalition has fallen apart. And so in many ways, charter schools are now quite vulnerable because they're at the party with not a lot of obvious friends. So there's a big push on the right to have charter schools redefined as private, so that then the protections of, say, the 14th Amendment wouldn't apply to the students who attend them. And yet, you also, you continue to have a real push within a certain branch of the Democratic Party. This would be the branch where the high-flying hedge funders congregate, right? They remain very enthusiastic about charter schools, both because of their record on achievement, and I'm thinking, primarily of urban charter schools, but because charter schools remain primarily non-union. So I think actually the conversation about charter schools has changed a lot. And if I were a charter school founder or a believer in them, I would be looking around right now, wondering if it might not make sense for me to be part of this larger coalition defending public schools, because charters actually have a whole lot to lose right now.
All right. Well, so just walk us through like sort of the fundamentals that we need to begin to, like, the concepts that we need to rally around. And then let's talk about from a policy perspective, because I look out there and I see nothing in terms of like any type of pushback, both from a rhetorical standpoint or about like, and I imagine COVID is also sort of like really, really undermined this. I mean, we had all these things happen, and then COVID's outside of the 1.5 million people who, or 1 million plus, I should say, people who passed away, and the people who have like a long COVID, the biggest sort of, I think, like casualty was people's relationship to public schools. Coming out of it. I mean, I think it's like, it's going to grow back in some way, but it's not, I don't know if it's going to grow back with the same sort of amount of vigor. And like, where is this, what needs to happen, and where, is there any place where it's happening?
So there is actually, there is amazing organizing happening all over the country. And so that's a big part of our book, because I think what the impression that people get is that there were school closures, people got really mad, that gave rise to groups like Moms for Liberty, and here they are just doing, they are cleaning up. And actually that's not true at all. 3/4 of the places where Moms for Liberty and allied organizations like the 1776 PAC, 3/4 of the places where they run, they end up losing. Why is that? It's because broad coalitions of folks are coming together, not just to defend kids, but to really kind of rally their communities around the idea that public education is essential and that vulnerable students need to be protected. And so one of the reasons that I'm so passionate about this stuff is that I actually see the organizing to defend and strengthen public education as some of the most exciting pushback against authoritarianism that's happening right now. And the reason it's taken off is precisely for what you were saying, Sam, that people on the ground in states like North Carolina, for example, where you have Republicans aggressively pushing to privatize schools, they understand that the goal is to turn back the clock 50 years or more on any kind of progress, and really to roll back the entire vision of equality and civil rights protections. And so I would argue that you're missing out on some incredible organizing, and that would be a great show for you to do.
Definitely. But I guess what I miss is maybe something programmatic. I mean, the organizing feels like it's a bulwark against, I mean, Moms from Liberty, they're lunatics. But what I feel like we need too is a proactive sort of a proactive movement.
Yes.
That is, the equivalent of like an Arnie Duncan, but for the good guys, for people who see the value. And like, I mean, I have always been just an ideological supporter of public schools. Like the idea of like, it wasn't necessarily an opportunity for me, particularly in New York, that my kids would go to private school, but I see the education that kids at private school get, and
I went to an all girls school,
right? One to one high school students. The amount of like of academic understanding that they have higher in most private schools. I mean, without a doubt. But the experience of like being part of a community.
Yep.
Going to school with people who are so dramatically diverse from you. I mean, my daughter just happened to just coincidentally go to a public school that was probably one of the most diverse in the country, in Brooklyn, statistically speaking. But it is that, to me, like the argument that should be the highest value, because first of all, even from a return on investment issue, like, the reason why these schools pay off for the most part is just simply because you're hanging around with other rich people.
That's right.
And rich people, hire other rich people because that's what their community is. It's not because when you were in, a junior in high school, you had your history class was more in depth. I mean, there's an opportunity for people to follow that. But that's not why you got hired at that job at Morgan Stanley or wherever it is, for that matter. And there seems to be a vacuum where we're not seeing a political leadership that is making that case. Like, I haven't heard a politician articulate this stuff in ages, it feels like.
Yeah, and I think this comes back to what Emma brought up at the beginning of our conversation. Can you imagine how refreshing it would be to have a VP who really viewed that as their job? And it is, like Kamala Harris is speaking today at the American Federation of Teachers convention in Houston. And, this is actually the first time in many years, right? Like, think back to the Obama years when they would show up at these conventions and they really viewed their job as throwing cold water on the audience, right? Like a little tough love, that like we're here to explain why we're going to make your life and job harder, and you have to suck it up and take it because you don't have any other choice. And so I absolutely agree with you that having somebody who has that sort of bully pulpit, who can really rally people around this bigger, broader vision of why we have public schools, it's really smart politics right now. There is a reason why in state after state, Republicans are not allowing their own citizens to vote on this stuff. They're, like in a state like Idaho, they tried to keep rural folks from testifying on a voucher bill because they knew they couldn't drive 9 hours to the state capitol in Boise. It's just smart politics to do that. And no, there really hasn't been anybody else in, say, the Biden administration who has played that role. The Secretary of Education, Miguel Cardona, sometimes he sounds like an Obama era throwback. Yep. Sometimes he's kind of inspiring, but for the most part, who really knows? So yes, I have very high hopes, and like Emma, I am waiting on the edge of my seat, just hoping that they are not dashed again.
I hate Shapiro for many reasons. I mean, he compared the student protesters on Gaza to the KKK. I just praying it's not him for many reasons. But Bashir, what's great about him, and this is kind of widening the conversation, but he can really, I think, speak to rural voters in a way that isn't condescending. And he talks about the opioid epidemic and how you can and contrast that with J.D. Vance, who makes it just kind of a personal pathology for the most part. But what's could be exciting if Bashir is the pick is Kamala Harris. My guess is she's going to run on childcare and elder care, right? And things about like increasing that for folks. And with abortion being on the front at the top of the ticket and women's reproductive care, that could really be a rounded out, holistic ticket about families, schools, how how can we make your family life better by strengthening our public schools, strengthening your ability to have child care and take care of the older people in your life. And she can do that as a woman as well in a way that could be a really exciting opportunity for Democrats if they take it.
I love that idea. And to me, it's so utterly preposterous that the Republicans are now, they are the party of the working class. They are populists. And yet, they have adopted as a litmus test issue that you have to support school choice. And that if you're a rural Republican who views part of your job as standing up for your local public schools, they are going to primary you. And so we've watched this now play out in state after state, in Iowa and Texas, and they're having great success doing this. And so that means that you now have rural Republicans who are no longer represented on this issue. And you think about it, like the public school in a rural community, it's not just the key institution, it's the largest employer.
Yep.
And so you have somebody like a J.D. Vance saying, like, we're the party of rural populism. And yet, one of their first big moves is to say, hey, we're going to defund the local public school. It's just such an opening for a candidate who really understands that dynamic. And like you were saying, can articulate this stuff in a way that doesn't sound phony or condescending.
What just give me your take on what's happening with Texas, because there's been a real assault or attempt, and there's been a sort of an odd coalition, if I understand what's going on there, maybe not so odd, of like who's been pushing back on these sort of voucher plans.
Yeah, so the key thing you need to know is that the governor, Greg Abbott, has made enacting a private school voucher plan really one of his top priorities. And so in order to do that, they really have to lean hard into the culture war issues. And so, he's been on the stump arguing that there's a rising wave of transgenderism that's threatening to swamp the Texas public schools. And then you have big money coming in. And so Jeff Yass, who is very chummy now with Donald Trump, people will know him as Pennsylvania's richest resident, but also an early investor in TikTok. So he has poured millions and millions of dollars into Texas in order to help Abbott try to enact school vouchers. And they did exactly what I was just describing, where they knocked out all of these rural Republicans who support their local public schools in hopes of now being able to jam this through when the legislature reconvenes. And so, yes, you have odd coalitions on both sides. But I think it's very telling that they, we're now months and months into this and they have not succeeded. And the longer this drags out and the worse the evidence is from other states, it's getting harder to hold up a program like this in a state that doesn't have one, when people can look at Arizona and be like, wow, they've blown an enormous hole in their budget.
Yep.
This does not seem like a good idea. And so on the one hand, Abbott may have the foot soldiers that he needs to do this, but they are going to have a hard time selling this.
Jennifer Berkshire, freelance journalist, co-host of the Have You Heard podcast. The book is The Education Wars, A Citizen's Guide and Defense Manual. You co-authored with Jack Schneider. Really important, I feel like, underlooked, like the ratio between how fundamental public school is to so many sort of like downstream issues, and the amount of attention it gets is way there's just too disparate of a delta there. Really appreciate you coming on. We'll put a link to that book at majority.fm.
Well, I so appreciate your having me, and the fact that both of you appreciate my passion and concern. I feel like we're a party of 3, 4 if you count my co-author, Jack Schneider.
Right. Send him my regards. All right. Folks, we're going to take a quick break, head into the fun half of the program.
Really hoping she picks Bashir now.
Well, you've become a Bashir fan. Bashir has always been my first pick for.
Oh, don't worry. I have a bookmarked tweet of mine from July 4th suggesting Bashir. So I just, I like to have receipts because I'm such a sicko. But I
actually think he's got a very good shot. I mean,
me too.
Look, Tim Walz has been great. I don't
Walz
think
is getting more buzz than I thought he would. It seems like in the
too.
last day or so he's really shot up.
I mean, he looks like the most unintimidating. Sort of like if you imagine somebody who's scared of Kamala Harris, Walz looks like he would comfort. Be like a big comfort.
Right.
Just sit next to them.
But is he too
old candy?
Is he too comforting? Like, is he too? I mean, they're the same age, by the way. He was joking about that on social media, saying like, "How are yes, you would lose your hair if you were in public school working with kids as long as I did," which is funny, right? So he's almost too kindly. Like, I like that Bashir is aggressive and also doesn't use lines of attacks on JD Vance that ring hollow, because he chooses to speak to the same audience, but does it in a way that's constructive and not freaking like, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, right? It could be a reorientation of the way that Democrats speak to areas like Kentucky.
Well, it's been a long time since we've had a nominee, or I should say even someone, Lloyd Benson was from Texas. But it's been, I don't know. I guess it hasn't been that long, but Bill Clinton and Al Gore. I guess.
Lockbox.
I can't even remember. Oh, Kerry was with Edwards. I guess he was from North Carolina. So,
right.
There's some things I've blocked out from my
You don't think
memory.
about Edwards very much.
But
Roy
I think
Cooper would be like a very safe pick, right? But
I just don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
But doesn't Walz have isn't the lieutenant governor a Republican in Minnesota? Is that what's going on? There was some, or am I thinking of somebody else? Maybe I'm thinking of Cooper.
You're thinking of Cooper in North Carolina, but that would just be when he's out of state campaigning, and I don't know. The risk is like, do you want to elevate the psychotic lieutenant governor to the position so that North Carolina voters know when they vote in the fall, this guy's psychotic? Or do you not want to put him in that position so the voters can envision him as governor? Right?
It's a good question. What do I think about JB Pritzker? I'm not sure if now's the time to have a billionaire on the ticket.
Yeah,
that's my feeling. Like,
spend the money, buddy.
I'm happy with the governorship that he's done in Illinois. I just don't know if.
Well, it's bad. Like, it's gonna get brought up. It's that stupid story about, he has a good record in Illinois, but I don't trust a billionaire. Sorry. And also, that's that salacious story about how he bought a second mansion near his house. Sam, have you heard about this? And then took out the toilets for tax reasons while they were renovating, or while they were planning on renovating it to build like an estate. So because he bought the mansion next door and took the toilets out, apparently. So he didn't.
Trump will hammer him on toilets. That's one of his favorite topics.
Wait, what?
The story is that he bought a mansion next door to his other mansion. Again, he's a billionaire.
I mean,
and,
who hasn't?
Right. Took the toilets out of the mansion that was vacant when
was he going to combine the mansions?
He was going to renovate it at
One's
some
a guest
point.
house.
But he took what'd you say?
It's a guest house.
Right. He took the toilets out for a period of time so he didn't have to pay taxes on it as a residence.
A little bit cheap.
This is the thing.
But then that reminds people he's a billionaire. Like that's the thing.
I mean,
that's the
you're
salience of that story.
How much could the taxes be?
I know, it's crazy.
I know, it's insane. So he's been a very good governor, like when you look at the accomplishments, and people say he's the class traitor. I believe people who are more well versed in his record than I am, but I just think we got to think about optics.
Let's raise the bar a little bit for that. Let's put
What'd
some
you
more
say?
numbers on the board if you're going to be a class traitor. I mean, I agree he's fine.
Apparently,
but
Bashir was on Morning Joe this morning.
He has been making the rounds and acting like he's already the pick, but it's also just like I can't tell if he's just being thirsty or if he knows something we don't know.
Brennan from Kentucky. Bashir is working with a very conservative legislature, but the fact that he signed into law HB 5, which phases out barrel taxes on the bourbon companies who negotiated huge tax incentives to build warehouses based on the existence of a barrel tax, makes me worried about his neoliberalism and fiscal policy. That's the thing. I mean, that is what favors Walz. Like, you can look at Tim Walz and say, like, okay, we know exactly what we're getting. With Bashir, you don't know. You assume that, he's been working with a conservative legislature. Maybe he doesn't, but he's also a guy who enfranchised like 180,000, almost 200,000 people, as far as I recall, with like an executive order. So,
yeah, I mean, between Bashir and Walz, because I mean, Walz also vetoed the minimum wage bill for Uber. Right. So, like, I mean, they're Democrats, but it's like there are marginally better Democrats, which I would say Walz and Bashir are, and there are marginally worse Democrats like Kelly and Shapiro.
You got to be worried too. People have to keep in mind. 8 years from now, I mean, if all goes well, they'll be on the ticket and they'll be the presumptive nominee. So,
and if they want, the whole thing is they're going future, right? Bashir looks like, again, just these are strategic selections. The VP is a ceremonial role. That's why you can, in some way, like have to look at hints about what Harris believes versus saying like, oh, they'll just be Biden 2.0. It's not going to be Biden 2.0 because she can't dissent as vice president. So it's more about strategy than anything, right? And then,
I mean, I think that like, she's more likely to be Biden 2.0 than any of the other potential candidates were, because when you're governor, right? I mean, if you get to a governorship, more often than not, you've had aides that have been with you for a long time, and you've been working on the same sort of like issue sets. She went rather quickly into the Senate and then into, I don't know. I'd be curious.
But this is where I don't understand that, because she made a point to going before she ran for president to have the quote most liberal voting record in the Senate, more liberal than Bernie. That's what she was saying, right? Like, I don't know how true that is in very smaller sample size versus Bernie Sanders. And we know that that's not the case. If she's Biden 2.0, Biden's been one of the more conservative Democrats throughout his entire career. How
you got to look at who's been staffing. Yeah, I mean, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, and his background from being like from a small state in Delaware versus her in this large, massive state coming up in California in that political machine, they have extremely different backgrounds. Like, so I don't know outside of her being in the administration what would indicate that she'd be Biden 2.0. I think she'll probably build on some of what Biden did, the good stuff, because that's more of a reflection of where the party is than what's in her heart, right? And that matters more than anything, except for maybe the Zionism piece, because that seemed to be very much in Biden's.
All right, well, let's take a break. We got so much to do. So much to do, so little time. Folks, you can join us in the fun half. It's not always fun, but sometimes it is. These days it's been more fun than it was like a week ago. I can tell you that right now. By becoming a member, jointhemajorityreport.com. The next 4 months, 3 months are going to be quite a ride. And then, I mean, the 4 years could go one way or they could go another way. But either way is going to be, I think, pretty intense because I think the demands out of Harris are going to be even greater than they were out of Biden. And I think there's going to be a lot of enthusiasm if she ends up being the president. And if Donald Trump ends up being the president with JD Vance, then
God help us all.
It's going to be a shit show. JoinTheMajorityReport.com. JoinTheMajorityReport.com. Also, don't forget JustCoffee.coop. Fair trade coffee and hot chocolate. Use the coupon code Majority, get 10% off. You can buy the Majority Report blend. They're a great company. They're a co-op. They really, really care about their suppliers in Mexico and Africa and other places. So check them out. Emma, ESVN.
We're off this week, but we'll be back next week because training camp's ramping up. We'll talk a little bit about the Olympics as well once those start in earnest. I guess, is it today? Yeah, today. So we'll have some more info, youtube.com/ESVN show.
Matt.
Yeah, last night on Left Reckoning at the Left Reckoning YouTube channel and other places, Bronco March, Teach of Jacobin, talking about his recent pieces on Joe Biden. He wrote the book Yesterday's Man on Biden in 2020, and also his expansive piece in Jacobin, Which Kamala Are We Going to Get, which I think is a pretty fair assessment of her record leading up to this. So patreon.com/Left Reckoning to support us there.
All right, folks. See you in the fun half.
3 months from now, 6 months from now, 9 months from now. And I don't think it's going to be the same as it looks like in 6 months from now. And I don't know if it's necessarily going to be better 6 months from now than it is 3 months from now. But I think around 18 months out, we're going to look back and go like, wow. What? What is that going on? It's nuts. Wait a second. Hold on for a second.
The Majority Report.
Emma, welcome to the program.
Hey.
Matt.
What is up, everyone?
Nomi Key.
You did it. Let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon.
Bradley, you want to say hello?
Sorry to disappoint everyone. I'm just a random guy.
It's all the boys today.
Fundamentally false.
No, I'm sorry. Women's
Stop talking for a second and let me finish.
Where is this coming from, dude?
But dude, you want to smoke this 7A?
Yes.
Hi, me? Is me?
Yes.
Is this me?
Is it me?
It is you.
Is this me? Hello? Is this me?
I think it is you. Who is you? No sound. Every single freaking day. What's on your mind?
Sports. We can discuss free markets and we can discuss capitalism.
I'm going to go throw up.
Who libertarians? They're so stupid, though. Common sense says, of course.
gobbledygook.
We fucking nailed him.
So what's 79 plus 21?
Challenge met.
I'm positively quivering. I believe 96, I want to say.
857-210-35 501 1 half 3 8s
9/11, for instance.
$3,400, $1,900.
6, 5, 4, $3 trillion sold. It's a zero-sum game.
Actually, you're making me think less of it.
But let me say this. Poop.
You can call it satire. Sam goes, it's satire.
On top of it all,
Yeah.
my favorite part about you is just like every day, all day, like everything you do.
Without a doubt. Hey, buddy, we see you. All right, folks.
It's just the week being weeded out, obviously.
Yeah, sun's out, guns out. I don't know.
But you should know.
People just don't like to entertain ideas anymore.
I have a question. Who cares?
Our chat is enabled, folks.
I love it.
I do love that.
Look, gotta jump. Gotta be quick. I gotta jump.
I'm losing it, bro.
2 o'clock. We're already late, and the guy's being a dick. So screw him. Sent to a gulag?
Outrageous.
Like, what is wrong with you?
Love you. Bye.
Love you. Bye-bye. We are just, I guess, moments away from a alleged war criminal. I mean, I'm trying to be precise here. I think he's a war criminal. I think he's a war criminal.
Yeah.
But speaking in front of Congress, do we have a final tally of how many Democrats are going to be? We know that one Republican, Massey, is going to be boycotting Netanyahu today. Where are we at with the Democrats? Do we know?
Let me just check.
Last count was 86. Here is clip number 8. This is, or I should say clip number 9. This is Illinois Representative Delia Ramirez yesterday speaking on the House floor about the idea that Netanyahu would be addressing Congress.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to express my outrage on the eve of Prime Minister Netanyahu's joint address. His address is a slap in the face to the thousands and thousands of Americans who have been demanding a ceasefire. The people of conscience opposed to U.S.-supplied bombs killing women and children, and the 12 U.S. government officials who have resigned protesting the national security and moral crisis our policies are creating. We cannot work towards peace while giving a war criminal the floor, or exert moral authority while supporting the killing of children and civilians, nor defend national interests while eroding our relationships across the world. We must listen to the American people and our officials and our diplomats, like Major Harrison Mann, who will be standing with me tomorrow, to demand the administration and our leadership change course. I hear them. What they say is not one more bomb, not one more dollar, not one more excuse for Netanyahu's atrocities. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Perfect.
10 out of 10.
I think Representative Ramirez was one of the earlier, first dozen or 2 dozen Democrats in the House, along with the squad and others, who called for a ceasefire, right? If I'm not mistaken. So that's good. And also, this is why the unions are flexing their power here, and they should. The UAW, SEIU, United Electrical Workers, Postal Workers Union, the National Education Association, and more all signed a letter yesterday saying Biden needs to stop sending military aid to Israel. And there are going to be some Democrats that need to respond to that pressure, even if they feel reticent to do so. And I'm hoping that
Flight
pressure,
too.
Goes to the top of the ticket.
And
Harris, who's also not going to attend.
Those unions immediately endorsed Harris, and I would just say it would be doing them a pretty big disservice if Harris turned around and repaid their rush to endorse her with either Shapiro or a Kelly on these matters that they're widely opposed to the current administration on. So she should absolutely not rain on her current parade by making such an awful decision for the bad reasons that would be obvious to everybody.
Yeah, I think we'll have a better sense within a week or two as to what the implications of her now being the presidential nominee will have on American policy going forward. Although I wouldn't put it past Joe Biden to sort of well, this is the wheel you're not getting a hold of this. You can You can sit in the front seat, but you're not touching the wheel.
You can cry, cry Zionism from my cold, dead hands.
Here is Palestinian journalist Rula Jibril. She is speaking with Mehdi Hassan on Zeteo yesterday, basically pointing out the difficulty that Harris may have running as a prosecutor in her attempts to prosecute the campaign against Donald Trump, if she's sort of turning a blind eye to the criminal enterprise that we are funding in terms of what Israel is doing in genociding the Palestinian people.
She's not going to be sitting next to him and applauding, which is a big deal and a pivot from others, but it's a low bar.
Yes.
Kamala Harris, and I've been actually trying to reach out to her team for a long time, since May last year, trying to explain that we need to pivot from this unconditional support, which is in defiance, in violation of America's Leahy law and international law. She is running on the fact of being prosecutor of, an official of law and order, of the women who stand for legality. You cannot stand for legality and give a pass to a war criminal. You cannot claim that you're defending international humanitarian law and rule-based international order and then ignore what Netanyahu, Ben-Gvir, and Smotrich, the crimes they are committing, and stand accused of committing before the highest courts in the world, the ICC and the ICJ. One of the two things. You cannot be saying that, Israel has the exception and exceptionalize Israel, and then attack Trump and say, well, he doesn't believe in international legality. Well, either you share his values and his talking points about Israel legality and exceptionalism, or you don't. And if you want to win voters, progressive young voters, activists, you have to pivot from Biden failed policy. And I am sorry to say it, I think Netanyahu meddled way too much in American policy. The Obama nuclear deal, the Iraq war, which was a catastrophe for America. And again, he is pro-Trump and pro-Putin, as we saw in billboards all across Israel during the election campaign. If you don't want to be on that side, you have to come out very clearly, not pro-Palestinian or advocating for Palestinian, advocating for international law and international legality. That's what will make a huge difference.
I love that idea. I hope that she takes it. It seems like kind of a layup, especially because Michigan needs to be one. Pennsylvania also has a large Muslim population as well. And it's not just, of course, Muslim or Arab people or Palestinians. It's young people. It's all the young people that want. That's part of what is energizing this excitement. Is that Biden was considered, as a willing participant in the genocide in Gaza.
Yeah.
And like when she mentions the Iran nuclear deal, that's where people do have hope, right? Needs to see action. But the fact that she has one of the biggest proponents of the Iran nuclear deal as her national security advisor as vice president, and there are reports that she may get rid of the West exec ghouls like Blinken and Sullivan, who
lock them up.
McGurk.
McGurk
is the guy.
McGurk is the guy. But
I wouldn't mind seeing that guy in the stockades. Do we still have the stockades in the back of the White House?
Could bring that back.
But she does need to change course because, Chris Van Hollen, I heard him this morning talk about his decision not to go to Netanyahu's address, which I applaud. But one, he repeats the two-state solution refrain, which is a fantasy. The Knesset just voted overwhelmingly in Israel to say that we do not recognize a Palestinian state. They formalized what has been operational since 1967, which is that this entire land from the river to the sea is ours. And we'll say a two-state solution to the liberals in America as a way to buy time and take more land. I'm not expecting many Democrats to change their refrain on that very front, but they need to. what Van Hollen said, I lost my train of thought. He had something else that he said there that I took objection to. Oh, yes, exactly. He said, well, part of it was pursuing the Abraham Accords. That's what Chris Van Hollen said. No.
They're insane.
No. Like, McGurk being someone that came over from Trump to Biden, Harris needs to make it clear she's going to break that chain.
Yep.
Because pursuing normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia in exchange to giving like defense promises and potentially nuclear capabilities to Saudi Arabia just to prop up Israel is insanity, and also is what contributed to the Hamas attack on October 7th, because they were entirely boxed out of the equation. So those are some of the things that she needs to change substantively if she is to become president and when she is president, but also just like make it clear in the rhetoric too that you're going to shift things.
That's the tough thing, because I think the average Democrat is better on Biden, but I think the moment calls for something more than the average Democrat, frankly, and it calls for a special courage to confront Israel. And it's nice to say like we have all these symbolic things that we're moving forward on. But can this campaign confront the symbolic fact that Emma just pointed to, which is that the Knesset themselves said, yeah, we're not doing that two-state solution stuff? Or are we going to have to ignore that because it's easier to campaign if we act like that's not the case?
Turning off the voicemail, we'll take calls at 646-257-3920. I think I had referenced this at the top of the program. I'm not sure. But here is CBS News' Tracy Smith. Speaking with doctors who have been in Gaza, the doctors describe the conditions they're seeing with patients. One of these doctors, Dr. Mark Perlmutter, is a North Carolina area orthopedic surgeon. It's not terribly important, beyond this guy being a doctor, a surgeon, who had the courage to go over there. I mean, it's very dangerous. But I should say, I think I have some Perlmutters in my family tree. And it is, this is just harrowing to hear doctors talk like this.
When were you in Gaza?
End of April for the first couple weeks of May.
Dr. Mark Perlmutter, an orthopedic surgeon from North Carolina and vice president of the International College of Surgeons, volunteered in Gaza.
So, of all the disaster zones you've seen, how does Gaza compare?
All of the disasters I've seen combined, 40 mission trips, 30 years, ground zero, earthquakes, all of that combined doesn't equal the level of carnage that I saw against civilians in just my first week in Gaza.
And when you say civilians, is it mostly children?
Almost exclusively children. I've never seen that before. Never seen that. I've seen more incinerated children than I've ever seen in my entire life combined. I've seen more shredded children in just the first week.
Shredded?
Shredded.
What do you mean?
Missing body parts, being crushed by buildings, the greatest majority, or bomb explosions, the next greatest majority. We've taken shrapnel as big as my thumb out of 8-year-olds, and then there's sniper bullets. I have children that were shot twice.
Wait, you're saying that children in Gaza are being shot by snipers?
Definitively. I have 2 children that I have photographs of that were shot so perfectly in the chest I couldn't put my stethoscope over their heart more accurately, and directly on the side of the head in the same child. No toddler gets shot twice by mistake by the world's best sniper, and they're dead center shots.
In fact, more than 20 doctors recently in Gaza also told Sunday Morning about gunshot wounds to children.
Okay. This is, you get the picture. It's good to be seeing this at least on CBS News, on national news, so that people can get a sense of like just the level of carnage, the complete hollowness of the idea that to protect the security of Israelis or Israel, we need to murder children in this way.
Yeah. To protect Israel in the way that it's constructed, genocide is the natural end goal, right? Because they need to maintain a demographic majority and they want to expand territory and control. And if people don't leave, time to kill them.
It's about demographics, not terrorism. And
Yeah.
we have a very infantilized discussion on that because most networks are still in the mode that this is about terrorism, but it is clearly about demographics and land. And it's been that way for years. It'd be nice to turn the corner on that discussion.
It would be nice to turn the corner on the war discussion too. I know that like news organizations cower when they get talking points from Israel lobbies, and when they bitch to the New York Times about things. But you can't go to war against populations of people that you control, especially when they don't have. It would be like if the only analogy would be like, oh, it's a civil war, but they don't have an air force. We control their borders, land and sea. We control their electricity. We control their water. We control every aspect of their lives. And then we're going to go to war against them. At best, it's the most asymmetrical war humanly possible. But the reality is that it's not. It's deciding to do genocide within your own borders, to kill wholesale people under your control. To create demographic advantages for one group. So that's the truth.
I mean, we had Ben Case on Left Reckoning talking about just it objectively based on criteria that existed prior to October 7th. It's a colonial massacre based on what Emma just said, who exerts control over a region, what the imbalance of who's capable of striking who is, just by the numbers. It's a colonial massacre.
All right, let's go. Let's read some IMs. Dave from Jamaica, Colonial Massacre. Johnny Blaze just wanted to give a public service announcement. There's a new skate park in West Virginia called Pools Paradise. It's receiving quite an alarming amount of one-star reviews. What even stranger is the one-star review reference beanies, sushi, or RM Brown sound drops. Please, people, do not Google Pools Paradise in West Virginia and submit fake reviews.
That can't really be what it's called, can it?
Zane, can we take a moment? That's amazing. Can we take a moment to celebrate the end of I don't think I can vote for Biden calls in the fun half? Very excited about the side effect of Joe stepping aside. Vaughn from Wisconsin, excluding U.S. presidents, when was the last time a war criminal addressed Congress? Mamala Police State. Regardless of Kamala's absence in today's speech, I'm proud of how progressives have helped move Dems towards more leftward on Palestinian rights. Takes time, sadly. With regard to Harris, Emma, Sam, you should talk to two segments: rich black women, caucus groups, versus working class women. Their opinions are vastly different. I am part of the minority community in Chicago. We hate Kamala, her iron fist approach to crime, and in general, how donors are supporting her. Yeah, I mean, that tracks.
She's just marginally better than Biden, but that's I've heard the exact same thing. I mean, she's marginally better than Biden, but yes, she's not a she has upset a huge part of the electorate that we would not want to see upset.
Yeah. And so, I think, like, what's clear to me from the Biden administration, again, the caveat, foreign policy, but past performance is not always indicative of what you will get in the future. I'm not making any predictions one way or another, and I certainly think it's valid for people to hold Harris to account for her days as Attorney General and as District Attorney. But politicians do politics, and a lot of times what you see them is, I'm going to be a type, and I'm going to play against that type. And, you see this with, I mean, every politician does this, right? I mean, they will sort of present themselves as being able to sort of like speak to two constituencies at once. So, I mean, I don't know what else to say about that. JR in Philly, she sent 45 men to jail for weed in San Francisco. I know it's bad, but good Lord, people need to understand what the stakes are here. I mean, I think people do.
I think people do. I just object to that she's marginally better. I don't know what in her record would indicate she's just marginally better than Biden. Like, I'm curious why that's the talking point, like, that I'm hearing a lot.
The crime stuff?
No, I mean, but she co-sponsored Medicare for All. She co-sponsored Green New Deal.
Again, like, that stuff I think is in the context of Bernie Sanders was running.
It cuts both ways.
It cuts
like,
both
her
ways,
prosecutorial work also could be interpreted that way. She's in San Francisco. She wants to do a statewide run, so she's going to be, sort of like overly cop.
And then in that time, she also had a massive judgment against against a big bank, and then you have the Mnuchin thing. But then she also was anti. She played it both ways. But again, like, I want to train, like, not to train people, I guess, not to, like, look into the hearts always of the politicians, except when it's relevant. Like, she showed that she's more responsive to the left.
Without
in her run, right? She was responsive enough to say, like, I want to sponsor a Green New Deal. I want to sponsor Medicare for All. And she also then, in the end, said that she wanted to expand it to dental and vision. Those are actually, like, Biden said, I'm going to veto Medicare for All. So
I'm saying she's good relative to Biden. I'm saying why activists aren't excited about her and don't expect much from her. And I don't think they're wrong to not expect much from her.
I don't think they're wrong to expect, but within the context of democratic politics, I think, like, I think to say she's marginally better than Biden as a Democrat, I don't know.
Well, I think Biden had a good, I mean, again, outside of foreign policy. I mean, Biden, I've said this before, like, the most progressive president of my aware, lifetime. I mean, LBJ,
domestically, right?
Yeah. I said foreign policy aside. All right, let's go to the phones. Calling from a 551 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Oh my God, it's me again. Hi, Sam. It's A Square.
A Squared. It's like a regular habit for you.
Yeah, it'll be a couple of months when I call again with my workload. But I just had to say I needed a good laugh, and that Vámonos Mamala just did it for me. That was just great. I don't know if you can add it as a drop, but it was really funny. Emma, I just wanted to say that it's great to see you smile this week the way you have. And I think we need some memes of you before and after the Biden drop. And maybe we add some coconut. So I just,
I'll deploy you to do that, A Squared. I don't know if I have the time, but someone can do that. We'll outsource that.
I too heard that refrain growing up in the Caribbean. It's about having the smarts and the context. And so I'm glad to see that people are just taking these negatives against her and trying to weaponize them against the right. We hardly see the Dems doing something like that. So I just wanted to say, Sam, too, that I think you were right about what you said about AOC, what she was trying to do. But I think she was hamstrung in naming Pelosi and Obama. I know that, her messaging when she did that Instagram Live was a little bit like maybe coded, but Roland Martin, Joanne Reed, and other people have commented on this as well in the last 2 weeks. In fact, Joanne Reed referred to it as the Queen's Gambit. So it was more than a rumor than Obama and Pelosi wanted not only Biden, but they wanted Harris off the ticket. And I think that the point that AOC was making was so important, that the union support here would be critical, and that wasn't automatic for Kamala Harris. As it stands right now, I heard Sean Fine on Maddow a couple of days ago, and you could see how pained he was about Biden dropping out, and that he was being cautious. It seems like the UAW membership is not ready to endorse her yet. So, but on
Good.
the upside, I joined.
They should get concessions and promises before they do that.
Yes, and I think exactly, and I think that's what they want to do, and smart of them to do it. And so, on an upside, I joined the call on Sunday of the organization is called Win with Black Women, and it was electric. It was as people are describing it. It was just more than just talk. They're outlining strategies, deploying the HBCU groups, the Divine Nine organizations, and I think people are clear-eyed that there's risk, but everybody sounded very, very hopeful. So this is going to be an uphill battle. I mean, there's the negatives that I heard you discussing today that people are calling about, and they're very fair criticisms of her. But I think that it's a 4-alarm fire, and I hope that people can suspend disbelief a bit, and that we can get her through. I mean, it's just the conversation today about what's happening with education. I don't know if you guys have been following this in Puerto Rico. And Emma, thank you. You had a great interview with somebody on the situation in Puerto Rico recently. But if you want to see what's going to happen here, I don't know. I'm going to see if I can suggest somebody to talk about how they have decimated the public school system in Puerto Rico. It's a crying shame. I'm a product of it, and I've always been very proud of it. And it's just very, very sad. So thank you always, guys, for keeping us up in these crazy times, and let's hope and prepare, like Matt says, and prepare.
Thanks, A Squared.
By the way, Matt.
Yep.
Bye.
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 Oh.
Speaking of people who've addressed Congress that may be like sort of war criminals or at least sort of atrocity doers, Modi has spoken twice in the past 8 years.
Oh yeah,
including last year.
Do we do number 2 or do number 5?
I mean, when are we gonna do that, Dave Rubin? Because I'm kind of thirsty for that one.
Which one is that? Which Dave Rubin?
Which one is that? What number?
The one where he was predicting?
The one where he's the coup one. Like we're sort of turning the page on the Joe Biden was couped out thing, but Dave Rubin's contribution to that discourse was really good.
Is it what? Give me what number you're talking about, because we have 2 Rubins, don't we?
It's the first one of the 2 Rubins, but I'll just.
This is the one that's stitched together. Well, I think we already touched on this, but we can do it again.
No, Sam. The one before. It's number 21.
Oh, 21.
Yeah, apologies. Number 21, not 22. Or not.
He makes an interesting cultural allusion here too.
Oh, 21. Oh, yes. Okay. Now look. As deep state DNC shills.
Duh.
Our job is to try and suppress this thing. So we're going to play it, but of course we're going to mock it because we got to make it seem like it's absolutely crazy. We've got a couple of videos that we're going to have to do this too.
It's a mockery limited hangout.
Exactly. And so here's Dave Rubin, who is getting dangerously close to the truth.
Now, I don't think anyone should support Joe Biden because of his horrible policies. I don't think anyone should be voting for someone that obviously is cognitively declined to be president of the United States, but understand what the Democrats just did. It is a coup. There's no other way to describe it. It is a coup. They had a completely farcical and fake primary process where they ensured that RFK was going to be pushed out altogether. Thus, he left the Democrat Party. They didn't let anyone run against Biden. Then they had this insanely early debate because their feeling was, oh, he really is breaking down. We better expose it early as opposed to doing the debate after he's accepted the nomination, right?
Pause it
Normally
1 second. I would just point out, and look, I've been a long proponent even last year of like we should have a more robust primary sort of system, even for were incumbents, but Donald Trump also did not have a primary when he was the incumbent. So like this
In
principle
2020.
is so fantastical.
And let's be clear, there is no doubt that the DNC made the bar, rose the bar, and made it harder for people to primary Joe Biden. There's no doubt about that. But like Matt says, parties always do this. They always are in the incumbency protection racket.
Yep.
But I should also say that there was nobody who was looking to primary Joe Biden. There was a lot of people, I think, who were like throwing around the idea, like, are you going to be able to make it like through not the campaign? I think people were genuinely surprised, particularly after the State of the Union, where he was by the time of the debate.
Yeah.
The idea that they did this to block RFK. I will tell you something. You have to be so pea-brained because
worm-brained.
You want RFK to run in the Democratic primary,
right?
And then come to the convention and say, "Okay, I lost fair and square." Because what you don't want, if you are running in a tight race, when the past 2 elections against Donald Trump have come down to literally 5 digits in an election of over 150 million people, depending on which one we're talking about, where it comes down to literally tens of thousands of people across several states. You don't want RFK to be a third-party candidate.
Yeah.
How pea-brained do you have to be? Like, this is the thing that I love about these conspiracies.
Yeah.
Because they did the same thing with Obama with like the birth certificate. They're like, Obama's been able to do this whole huge thing where he's got the state of Hawaii in his back pocket, and he's controlling all of them. And what they're doing with the controls, you're just putting out a certificate of live birth, not a birth certificate. And it's like, on one hand, Barack Obama has superpowers that can control the entire state of Hawaii. On the other hand, he can't forge a birth certificate.
Right.
Right.
Like you can't wait. What?
We can plant the announcement in the newspaper in Honolulu, but we can't actually just go that far to have the government that we control.
I have superpowers. I have superpowers where I can fly and have X-ray vision, but I also can't take a bus.
Yeah.
And I mean,
that's a plot hole. Go ahead.
This is in the context of that leaked call where RFK is like basically finagling for Trump. Like if there's anybody who the party should have been conspiring against, it's this guy who's conspiring against him. Imagine if the Libertarian candidate was on a phone call with Kamala Harris talking about like, oh yeah, after this election, I run spoiler in. Like, can I get a position because I love all these things you do?
And there was reporting after that they were in talks for him to like be a part of the administration in some way. Like Dave's just trying to wish cast his Why I Left the Left like hero's journey onto RFK running as a right winger in the Democratic Party.
Let's keep playing. I think it's also just like he just realizes like he's got nothing left in terms of like ideas. So it's all just like he's constantly peddling these conspiracy theories, and even his own like side is like embarrassing him on live video, whatever. Go ahead.
They didn't let anyone run against Biden. Then they had this insanely early debate because their feeling was, oh, he really is breaking down. We better expose it early, as opposed to doing the debate after he's accepted the nomination, right? Normally, you have
these all-powerful people, they can't get him to get off the ticket. They need to expose it early. Like, wait, what? Why don't you just get rid of Biden? What do you mean you need to expose?
Just pull the string.
Early, as opposed to doing the debate after he's accepted the nomination, right? Normally, you have the convention party, July or August, right? The Republicans just had theirs. The Democrats are in August. And then you'd have the presidential debates, 3 presidential debates in the fall. But they knew that would be too late to replace him, so they moved it up early. So they have insulted their voters. They will change every regulation, every norm, every party plan. They will burn it all down in the quest for power. What did I say last week about the Republicans, right? During 2015, the Republicans, they had an insurgent candidate that nobody in the party really wanted, but they didn't change all of the rules for it. They didn't insult their voters. They let their voters vote, and Trump became president. The Democrats insulted all of their voters, didn't have a primary, despite the fact everybody knew the guy had to.
One quick fact,
and now,
zoom in on it. One quick fact is the Democrats' polling is widely in support of this.
You can see how upset the Democrats are that they're actually so angry they're throwing money at the candidate.
Dave's upset that they're not upset.
Exactly. Go ahead.
Now they are going to do whatever they have. It seems like they're lining up against Kamala, but Obama actually hasn't endorsed her. So they may have an internal fight, but they will do whatever they have to do. And the point of all of that is I have often said to you guys that these people operate like the alien in the Alien movies. And I wrote about this in Don't Burn This Country. This is how the woke operate, but this is really how
wrote
the
about
Democrats
this, you
operate.
idiot.
There is nothing they won't do to accomplish their goal. So this is the end. It's about 30 seconds. End scene from the original Alien movie as Ash, who is the robotic doctor. He's an android doctor on the ship, and the alien has now virtually killed everybody
I want
else.
to
Only
see
two or
this.
three people
No,
remain.
well, we can't. I don't want to play this clip.
Why he
Let's just play a little bit
admires
of it.
the alien, and this will explain what the Democrats are doing right now.
And now you can just skip ahead, Bradley. He plays this inscrutable clip that I've never seen this movie, actually.
Okay.
And then let's just play it. Go to the
I've
tail
seen
end
the
of
movie.
it.
It's a good movie.
Pretty dark there at the end, but I think this is what we're up against. Really.
Keep going, Bradley.
The sci-fi stuff. But do you get it? He doesn't like what the alien is doing. You shouldn't like what the Democrats are doing, but you have to acknowledge what they are doing. What the elites, the Democrat, the media people, they are taking out an elected president of the United States. We don't even know where Joe Biden is right now. We don't even know if he signed that freaking thing. We have no idea if they're withholding medication from the guy. We just don't know. And I have no doubt that people will clip this and say I'm a conspiracy theorist, but I have a pretty good track record of at least directionally being right about a lot of this stuff.
Actually, you don't.
There?
You don't. Not directionally. Not in any. There's no qualifier in which you have a good track record about anything.
Right. Yeah. You were on the DeSantis train. You have a pretty good track record.
Unbelievable.
So, like, why did
What
he
about
have
the
to go
Dem
through
exit? Something's happening. I'm sensing it. It just, he knew there was movement going one direction or another, but since he was on that bailiwick of like something's happening, there's a big Dem exit. Democrats have had record turnout in every election since he said that.
Yeah.
Record turnout. They have won every election since he said that.
It makes no sense.
2018, 2020, 2022, ever since he said there's a big movement to Dem exit, I'm feeling it. There's a big change. He got the idea that there was something happening, but directionally it was the opposite. So he's honestly one of the stupidest human beings there is out there. Although
it's funny when they reference pop culture like that. I know I go crazy with the sci-fi, but
I don't want to go crazy with it. But did you see how like they didn't like what was happening and then they did it? Well, that's like what I'm saying. Let's do this.
Want to do Brett?
Yeah, I was just gonna say. I mean, there's some things that like they're getting so crazy, and I've been doing this for a long time. And you know, there was a time where Alex Jones was a unique figure on the right in the media landscape. I mean, when I came in 2004, we had a lot of 9/11 truthers. There was some, I would think, who would have identified as being left wing, but it was sort of like I think they were sort of like non-ideological, maybe a lot of those people, somewhere on the right, maybe a little bit on the left, but they have all, so many of these conspiracy-minded people have landed on the right now. I mean, there was all sorts of kerning things about Bush and with CBS News and all the stuff that Limbaugh really hyped this stuff with, Vince Foster and the Clintons killed them, and Hillary Clinton literally dragged his body into a park. And so this has been there, but it's their response. When you talk about cognitive dissonance, it is their response to realities that they cannot accept. They are so convinced that they are right, that when the world presents facts that that don't fit into that clash with their belief that they are right, they end up coming up with the most cockamamie, harebrained conspiracies so that their priors can actually in some way be consistent with the reality around there. So, if I'm like, it is 12 noon and I walk outside and it's pitch black, I immediately go, oh, somebody has obviously fed me a drug that makes me think it's dark out because I know it's 12 noon. This is what they're doing. And here is Brett Weinstein. You remember him of the IDW, Sam Harris, that intellect's best buddy until he also went conspiracy minded in terms of COVID. This is, again, if these people had the ability to do what he thinks they have the ability to do, why would they do it the way that they did it?
In this case, I think this hypothesis is highly likely. So if you'd like, you can describe this one as my hypothesis. My hypothesis in this case is that the many different kinds of evidence that President Biden could not be seen in public was actually a psyop, and that psyop had a likely target. The target would be folks who take the possibility of conspiracy seriously and have been exploring the various potential explanations for the assassination attempt on President Trump online, and especially on X/Twitter. So you need to know a little history to understand why I would think such a thing. The first piece of evidence you need to know about is that the term conspiracy theory was actually spread by the CIA in 1967, I believe, with the explicit purpose of discrediting people who were exploring alternatives to the official explanation as delivered by the Warren Commission for the JFK assassination. Now, there is some debate as to whether or not that's the actual origin of the term, but it doesn't really matter. What we know is that the CIA wanted to use that term against people who were interested in alternative explanations for that still mysterious event. The second thing you need to know is that there is an episode in the election of George W. Bush in which Dan Rather
he's going to do the kerning.
And the way he lost his job at CBS was that he went to press with a story about a commander of George W. Bush's when he was in the National Guard. And that commander, there was a document that reflected that commander's report on George W. Bush's dereliction of duty. This all seemed rather credible and fit with a bunch of other circumstantial evidence, but when Rather took it to press, I believe on...
All right, just skip ahead. I don't like this. I get the idea that people discredit conspiracies, but let's go into his conspiracy. Jump ahead here.
Okay.
Because it's his. He wants credit for it.
Because the Warren Commission is a joke.
Hey, if we do the bleach thing, you got that idea from me. Don't forget, okay? We got the bleach thing was from me.
Here it is.
Here we go.
My hypothesis in this case is that the many different kinds of evidence that President Biden could not be seen in public was actually a side.
Okay, we're gonna skip ahead
into exploring the evidence here, which had been arrayed in a way that the dots would inevitably be connected, and then President Biden could emerge and it would embarrass all of the people who had speculated about his coming demise, and it would cause a withdrawal of trust amongst those who had been listening to the many
let me just make it
highly
clear what he's
relevant.
saying here. Okay. He is saying that Biden has been playing possum so that people who are adept at providing alternative answers other than he's old or he's got COVID would go out on a limb and create explanations that were then Biden could come out and expose them as being wrong as a way of undermining their influence on really Twitter.
It's a psychological operation. I mean, it's a
psyop.
It's a psyop. They are giving the right wing is engaging in a conspiracy not because they're insane. No, because this is the one that's been it's the placebo to make them look it's discrediting
a
them.
rat F.
Right.
That is what Carl Karl Rove was had done at different times in running George Bush for office. Some people suspected that the people were afraid that they were going to get a hold of this National Guard story. So Rove had this fake document put up so that when people reported on it, they would get discredited and the story would go away. That's called a rat F, ladies and gentlemen, where for instance, that happened to Mike Cernovich. After remember, he had this whole document where Chuck Schumer was supposedly had sexually assaulted somebody or something, and then it turned out like, you don't know Chuck Schumer.
It's the function they performed during the pandemic, which is that a massive health crisis happened, and everybody who might look into, say, alternative solutions like, hey, maybe this should be we should have public health care and things like that. Instead, an alternative explanation was that the government is actually trying to kill us with this vaccine, so we can't actually trust the public institutions at all, and that worked very well. And I would just say, like, Brett Weinstein called me a drunk pilot about 4 years to the day ago, said I should be fired. That was in part because I pointed out to something that he said on his own show, which is that he has connections in Department of Homeland Security and different things like that. So talk about different rat Fs and different sort of turds in the punch bowl, as Alex Jones called David Icke. I think this guy is a giant floating turd in the punch bowl.
Well, I mean,
he's developed. Hold on. Let me just also address this because we are still examining your case. And we are. I want to make it clear that we still have a committee that is looking into your employment here, and because we wanted to take Weinstein's accusations and complaint seriously. So.
Well, but I really do like this. It's a really great get out of jail free card. Like how many conspiracies that they've engaged in were actually put out there falsely to discredit the real conspiracy theory.
Wait, you think we look stupid? That's actually been elaborately staged by our enemies. It's not our own idiocy.
I mean, look, this is what happened to Alex Jones. He was it was a false he got tricked via psychological operation into saying that, Sandy Hook was a bunch of crisis actors, and in order to continue to discredit conspiracy theories, there was a lawsuit and he was found liable for all of these lies, and they took him out, the guy that is giving you the real truth. And so Brett has to be the one that stands up. I mean, how far does this go back?
But haven't you tried to do the same thing with your bookie in terms of the Knicks? Like you were You were.
Hey, I got tricked into taking the under, okay?
Let's just listen to a little bit more Brett Weinstein.
A withdrawal of trust amongst those who had been listening to the many highly relevant critiques and explorations that have gone on surrounding the near assassination of President Trump. That means, if it turns out to be correct, that this was a sophisticated psyop. It's not a distraction. It's not people imagining things. It is people connecting dots that were placed for them to be connected. It felt like low-hanging fruit, but in fact, it's more like, get in the van and I'll give you some candy. It was a trap. Now, do I know this is true? Of course I do not.
That's a drop.
But the thing about the way science works is that...
I think Joe Biden has definitely been thinking to himself, I gotta throw these insane YouTube Rumble people off my trail.
I like the idea that these conspiracy theorists are so easily tricked that they would go into a stranger's van with candy and then get a conspiracy theory. And
Exactly.
They're
like little children who just follow candy.
You're just admitting that you don't have like a developed frontal cortex. Like, why, science term, Brett Weinstein, don't you have more editorial standards on the conspiracy theories? That's the real question here, is we should be looking into Weinstein's and all these other guys, their editorial standards on the conspiracy theories, just so they can weed out what's true from what's false.
What's also amazing is to watch Brett Weinstein there, and you can hear in the background, right, the seagulls and the birds, which, of course, it just goes to show you how Weinstein is like not on the top of his game, because there are no birds. The birds are not real. They are they're just there to surveil Weinstein.
A dissident.
Yes,
obviously.
So they can get a notion of where he's going to go with the video before he posts it. Send that information back to Biden in his bunker in Delaware, wherever he is, and that way they can come out and pre-react to Weinstein's video and undermine its credibility before the thing's even published. I mean, this is it's pretty amazing, because this is this is 101 stuff.
It's straight out of like how the Dulles brothers did Guatemala, for instance.
I mean, come on. Hello.
I mean, Brett, I have to question his credibility at this point if he's not able to discern when birds are surveilling him and when they're not. You have to know, like, does he have the right, does he have a bird's eye view of the facts on the ground here? I'm not exactly sure.
Do you guys want to watch a little more, or you guys, or do you have?
I think we're satiated.
You have your fill. Okay, good.
Yeah.
No, I'm going to be watching that up many, many times. Conspiracy theory, Ryan, Sam, apparently you're not caught up on regarding birds not being real. The founder of the organization came out as a fraud and reported his own death. Duh. We were supposed to have him on. Those guys.
Bailed on us multiple times.
Yeah,
maybe he was a robot.
So yeah, I guess Netanyahu started speaking, already mentioning civilization. So.
Oh God, F that guy.
Yep.
Let's play two examples, like we reported at the top of the show. Mike Johnson had to beg his fellow lawmakers in a closed-door session to not be overtly racist or misogynist in criticizing Kamala Harris. Unfortunately for Mike Johnson, there's gold in them there hills for right-wing talkers, and not just gold. I mean, to be fair, from their perspective, there's oxygen in those hills too. They need this stuff. It's not just to enrich themselves. It's also just living their life. Here's Fox's Jesse Waters going out and saying that, of course, she couldn't have gotten the job. She was not qualified for the job. Here she is.
how can Kamala Harris cobble together the Obama coalition if she can't even crack 5% with black voters? Those were her numbers in the 2020 Democratic primary. Biden, Bernie, Liz Warren, Cory Booker all did better with blacks than Kamala Harris. And suddenly she's the next Messiah? The only reason Kamala's in the White House is because of the DEI deal Biden cut with Bernie to seal the nomination. The only ones really pumped about Harris is
Pause
the
it for 1
machine.
second. Why is this repeated over and over again that this is a deal that she cut with Bernie?
I know. This is I'm about to solve it here. Minorities advancing, people coming over the border, all of that's orchestrated by who's it going to be?
But why wouldn't it have been Soros? Why Bernie?
Well,
like, was there any reporting at all?
They
No,
did pick
no.
the like, I think, less marketable Jewish person to be the puppet master for the monologue, but he's trying to basically say that she's also beholden to the radical left
That
Jew.
she's a socialist.
I don't
see.
remember
But, I mean,
any
this-
time.
There
I
was
need
no
Kamala in
reporting,
there.
but I've heard this now a half a dozen times from the right. But all right, keep going.
And suddenly she's the next Messiah? The only reason Kamala's in the White House is because of the DEI deal Biden cut with Bernie to seal the nomination. The only ones really pumped about Harris is the machine.
So now that the process is played out,
Pause it for 1 second.
From the
I got news for you. The machine was only pumped about Harris after it became inevitable. The machine tried to, I don't know, have Beyonce host the debate to elevate somebody else.
Yeah, the machine elevated Biden too. He was a loser in the primaries until South Carolina, and it's like, actually, this is the guy. Look at him. He became the Messiah. He beat your guy.
And I want it, like, the machine. Does he mean the Democratic Party? Because that's what a lot of us are saying. What I was saying in the lead up to Biden dropping out is like, like the primary process, she did not do well in the primary, but this isn't like an American Idol competition trying to find the best singer. Like, for the most part, the president is a cipher for like what the Democratic Party represents. It's different because Trump has a personality, like a cult of personality that took over the Republican Party. But the reality is that the negative partisanship about Republicans and what they want to do for the country right now is very salient for the Democrats.
Also, J.D. Vance was just selected as the VP for Trump, and he was definitely not picked because he's really popular. So we can look at the alternative motives for that pick as well.
Right. The point is,
he was picked because he had lots of cash. But wait a second,
Merit.
it's not just Jesse Waters who's
Right.
got this line. On Fox and Friends this morning, they apparently also did not get the memo. Try not to be overtly racist when you're talking about Harris. It's just makes it really hard for us to push any other issue.
Obviously, you compare him to President Biden, who was muddling his way through speeches. People know he couldn't go
anyone's
more
gonna
than
be better, right?
Yep, couldn't go more than 15 minutes. She's very good on the prompter. No one even doubted that. She had 3,000 people there. Why are they there? A lot of them have to do with, hey, I'm a Democrat. I thought we were going to go down in flames. Now we have a shot. But the problem with Kamala Harris, number one, she has not had her record exploited heavily because people thought and marginalized her. Even in the Democratic Party, they said, man, what a bad choice Joe Biden made. Number two is she hasn't sat down for an interview. When she sits down in an interview and says, do you want to fund ICE? Where do you stand on Medicare for all? Why didn't you show up? The most recent decision, already you got a question. She will not show up for the Prime Minister's joint session of Congress today. She'd rather address in the summer a sorority, a college sorority, like she can't get out of that. So that's her decision, and that's her decision to back up the protesters.
And how about the border? When they ask her about the border, I
All
haven't been to
right,
Europe
we can
either.
stop there. I just wanted to get to a colored sorority.
he's
Do they have a
saying he
time
said
machine
college. He's saying he said college, but it didn't sound like like colored, not college.
What do you say, college sorority or colored?
Because this isn't a college sorority. Like my godmother's member one of those sororities, and she was trying to get into that call that he's referring to, right? And she said that it filled up instantly. The 40,000 black women call right after Harris or Biden dropped out on that Sunday night because there was so much enthusiasm about it. And that's what he's like. They are older. They're older women, right? It's a sorority that extends outside of that. It's a community kind of for often like professional Black women outside of college. So that doesn't, or it extends outside of college. That doesn't necessarily make any sense, right? Like that he would be talking about a college sorority unless he just doesn't know what he's talking about.
Well, it's a bit redundant. I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure. Some people thought he said co-ed too, which is also, that doesn't make sense. There's not a co-ed sorority. But
sorority?
why would you say college? I mean, I think he might have said college, but why would you say college sorority? That's redundant if that's what you meant. Because what in that telling, all sororities would be college sororities, but I don't know.
Well, she is skipping the event. I mean, yes, of course she is.
She should.
I love the idea that they're going to beat her up over Medicare for all.
The good things, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that. I don't think most people are buying the college sorority thing. I think he did say colored. Fox is trying to dispute it, but I don't know. You guys can hear it for yourself.
This is, we were talking yesterday about how JD Vance is sort of uniquely unlikable in many ways. This is when he made that joke about drinking Mountain Dew that nobody could quite figure out why it was a joke, and he was chuckling at it, and you guys are lots of fun. And you've got Tim Walz out there. Maybe we'll play this in a bit, saying, what's wrong with these people? Like where they're prying into why they've had babies or didn't have babies, or how manly men should be. And JD Vance has got some weird revanchist and retrograde ideas. And, we sit here in our smug little, studio and pass judgment because we're not real Americans. Of course, we don't, we live in New York and Brooklyn. And, but it turns out that our perspective on JD Vance was rather on the nose. Here is CNN talking about how well JD Vance, or how much I should say, is helping Donald Trump's ticket.
It's a negative net territory. Look at that, -6 points. I will tell you, Aaron, I have gone all the way back since 1980. He is the first guy after immediately following a convention, a VP pick, who actually had a net negative favorable rating. That is underwater. The average since 2000 is +19 points. JD Vance making history in the completely wrong way.
I mean, it's amazing. +19. And I know people talk VPs don't usually matter, but they're usually
they're
not
pretty
a negative.
popular. Usually they're popular. In this case, he's dragging Trump down.
All right. And then there's also Ohio, which I, have been around long enough to have been there on an election night. And the reason I was there, because the person who wins Ohio wins the White House.
Right.
Ohio's a red state now.
Yeah.
So what does the JD Vance pick do for Trump? Obviously, he is senator from Ohio.
There's this whole idea, JD Vance is, going to help out in Ohio, perhaps help out in those Rust Belt, those Great Lake battleground states. But if you look at Ohio, JD Vance won in 2022, but he only won by 6 points. That's worse than Donald Trump did in 2020. It's far worse than Mike DeWine did in 2022. He was the worst performing Republican candidate in 2022 up and down the ballot in the state of Ohio. He had nothing there.
All right, so Trump does very well with white working class voters.
That is fantastic. And I mean, it's what is frustrating to me about these conversations that they have is like, well, then why did they pick him? They picked him because of Peter Thiel's money. They picked him because of Elon Musk's money, which apparently he pulled out.
Yeah.
Again. But he did it for the money.
Well, there's
it's
a thing.
The money.
They don't talk about that on the news, right? And I actually saw a segment on CNN where Vance was the topic of conversation, and a commentator brought up the Thiel money, and I saw them move so quickly away from it. Like it's like they don't want to go there because because it's a corporate media enterprise, and that might affect their bottom line. But that's why he picked this charisma suck. It wasn't because he had brought something to the ticket. All he did was bring money. And the problem is that Trump is burning so much of what they fundraise on lawyers' fees. So he's taking as much cash as he can and giving promises to Miriam Adelson. Hey, I'll annex the West Bank for you if I get elected, right? So that's like so central to his candidacy that not talking about the money piece of it because he's like he needs it for his legal fees. It just feels like a really dishonest way to cover the race.
It's either dishonest or just incredibly stupid. But I love the idea of how much Trump must be fuming now that JD Vance is a net negative for him. I mean,
look, he knows what's good on
he has a beard.
On TV. Yeah,
I knew it.
I got
knew
past
it.
the beard.
I should have trusted my beard
I
instinct.
should have my beard instincts. God.
And apparently, Don Jr. was the one who was really pushing for him too. And there was some funny tweet the other day saying that Trump's going to beat Don Jr. with a shoe when he sees these numbers.
We have some sartorial news. Bibi Netanyahu, of course, in D.C. Guess who's wearing a suit?
Oh, I thought he was going to be wearing a hoodie or like the Israel flag tied around his neck, and he could say, "We."
Honestly, that's the grossest thing I've ever seen from Fetterman. Like, dude, I mean, I'm okay with you wearing whatever you want to the Senate, but that you got to dress up for Bibi Netanyahu. This is how you show respect. Like, Jesus.
Did you see that Tlaib is in the chamber?
Yeah.
So can we just put this up really quickly? This is just why she, to Matt's point earlier, she's just such a phenomenal representative and needed right now. So a lot of members, like this rest of the squad, is boycotting to show how, and Harris is not attending, which is an encouraging sign for the Democrats. It's nice to see that level of resistance, but Rashida Tlaib is wearing a Palestinian pin, a keffiyeh, and she's joined in the chamber today by Hani Ahmadoun, who lost over 150 members of his extended family in Netanyahu's genocide. After witnessing his sister forced to eat animal feed, he and his family were determined to start a soup kitchen to feed their starving neighbors. So she's sitting in the chamber with this man and not standing, obviously. It's like, that's such strength and so symbolic. Like, Netanyahu is a sociopath and one of the worst criminals that this world has ever seen. But just for him to know that there's someone in the audience just staring at him like that.
One of the upsides of being a sociopath is that you wouldn't care.
But I like the symbolism of it. We're not afraid of you.
Everyone giving him a standing ovation, equally a criminal, in my opinion.
Yep. Horrible. We got time for one more clip because after tonight, I mean, we'll see. I mean, Biden's supposedly giving a speech tonight at 8 p.m. It could very well be an AI thing. And who would be running this AI? Well, of course, Chelsea Clinton. Why Chelsea Clinton? Because her mother is directing her what to do, and Chelsea's probably more adept on the computer at this point that would be running Biden. How do I know this? Well, Tim Pool has shown me the light.
The Biden campaign has officially filed. It's no longer the Biden campaign. The Biden X account is gone. It is now the Kamala account. Kamala has been endorsed by Joe Biden, by the Clintons, not by Obama. I am not yet convinced, my friends, that Kamala Harris will, in fact, be the nominee. I don't know for sure, but I'm actually leaning towards probably not Kamala Harris. We shall see.
Just one second. I just love how, like, he and everything he says, he tries to give himself some type of like plausible deniability. I'm actually sort of leaning towards maybe it will be possibly Kamala Harris, although maybe not.
But is he trying? So he hedges, right? But like taking the hedges out of it, is he trying to compete with Dave Rubin for who's like more wrong on electoral predictions? Because they're kind of up there in terms of tallies. He said that there would be a 49 state landslide for Donald Trump in 2020, and he's been predicting a civil war for the past, I don't know, 7 years or something like that. And it's just, I don't know if his instincts are that good.
His instincts aren't that good, but he knows where his money is, and that's in like basically just coming up with some of the most bat crap, crazy conspiracy theories. Here is
probably not Kamala Harris. We shall see. Just because she received the the endorsement, not the nomination, does not mean she will be the nominee. Some are speculating that Hillary Clinton will swoop in, pick up the nomination, and say, "I am willing to step up at this moment." And the only thing we need fear at this point, based on polling, is, well, a shadow campaign. We have no idea what is at store for us, but I can tell you this. I believe it is the only logical explanation.
For 1 second.
And
what does a shadow campaign mean? I don't think he knows what the word shadow campaign means. What does that mean, a shadow campaign?
A scary campaign.
But what is he? He doesn't know what...
A secret thing.
A secret campaign?
Mm-hmm.
But what's the secret campaign? Well, it's this. I don't
we
think
know
he knows
it's there. Okay.
I don't think shadow campaign is what he thinks it is.
We'll figure out the content of the shadow campaign later, and it's enough to know that it exists now.
Go ahead.
Yes. I believe it is the only logical explanation, and the most logical explanation, that Democrats pulled off this stunt, this scheme, to block RFK Jr. from being the Democrat nominee.
Oh my
He was, of
God.
course, running.
Pause it.
They blocked.
I hadn't seen this clip before. We just played Dave Rubin saying the same thing. The Dave Rubin, Tim Pool mind meld is upon us.
It's real.
There cannot be one. As Dave recedes into kind of like irrelevancy, Tim ascends to be the dumbest person in right-wing media. Like it's honestly beautiful. All right, keep going.
Jr. from being the Democrat nominee. He was, of course, running. They blocked him out. They said, no, you can't. And so here we are. The only people who are running against Joe Biden were, Dean Phillips? RFK Jr. wanted it, but they said, no, it's Joe Biden, end of story.
This is just like, you can check this. RFK was running in the Democratic primary. Marianne Williamson and Dean Phillips were running in the Democratic primary. RFK could have stayed in the Democratic primary, but he kept going on shows like Tim Pool and realized at one point, Democrats don't want to vote for me. I'm going to run as an independent. Go ahead.
Well, if RFK Jr. was going to run, he had to run as an independent. So he did. He declared his independence. Yeah, haha, very clever. And then, he ended up running.
Who are you talking to?
What happens then? As we all predicted oh so heavily, Joe Biden dropped out way late in the game, passed the deadline for several states. So what are these states going to have on their ballots? The Democrats in those states are going to pull strings and make special provisions so that they can change the name on the ballot. That's
okay, can you pause it? We would like to fact check this. Okay, this is ballots.
There's no names on any ballots.
No.
There's no deadline that's passed.
Okay, so Trump picked J.D. Vance officially on Wednesday, so a week from today when we're recording this. Biden dropped out on Sunday. So were all the ballots all printed in those 4 days, and you can't change them because Vance would have had to be on the ballot, and also Trump would have had to be officially the nominee. That's what the RNC is for. You become the nominee at the convention. The Democrats have not even had their virtual convention, nor have they had the real convention. You or
there is no nominee.
Are as
even now
legally,
there's no nominee.
Even now, right now, you or I are legally as much the Democratic nominee as Kamala Harris and or Joe Biden. So this is a lie. And it was meant to scare Biden into staying on the ticket. But I think lawyers at the DNC crunched the numbers and realized no, this is not a real thing. So anyway.
So they can change the name on the ballot. This is a component of the shadow campaign.
What he doesn't know what shadow
all of this, my friends.
means.
Welcome to another special live.
He doesn't know what shadow campaign means.
This is a component of the shadow campaign.
Just another update here. Here's Rashida in watching Netanyahu holding up a
sweet
paddle saying "war criminal" on it.
Can we play that clip I just? That's like 10 seconds of Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer, F you. Screw
Let's get
you.
rid of this guy.
Like, look at this. So first of all, Gillibrand, nice.
Same place she can go.
Gross.
I mean, putting people's retirement into Bitcoin.
You know, whatever. I interned at her office one summer, and like, this is disgusting. Look at Schumer. So he doesn't shake his hand. But you know, if you want to do they walk past each other. They have this icy reception. Then what was the point of inviting him? What's the point of inviting him?
Good question for Hakeem Jeffries as well.
I mean, it's just really insane because if this was about where the Democratic electorate is, it's all like ceasefire, conditioning aid at the very least. I mean, blocking aid is a popular position among Democrats. It's taken a back seat because of this Biden drama and now Harris excitement. But like, Schumer is representing here donors and not voters by doing this.
And I mean, I don't take seriously any party talking about fascism when they do that for Zionism.
I will also say just another breaking news because there's so much news. Mark Kelly is tells HuffPost he's going to vote for the PRO Act today on the Senate floor.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
So the reporting was, despite having two union parents, police officers, he had some reservations about the PRO Act. But now apparently he's found some way to get it past.
We've tweaked it a little bit, and the PRO Act is looking good. So there you go.
No, I think that's ideal. Even if he doesn't get picked, I think that's ideal. The fact that now he's on record supporting it, regardless of whether he gets picked.
I feel like he may get picked now.
I don't know.
I mean,
people love astronauts.
They need Arizona.
They're worried about Arizona, and apparently the polling says her weakness is that she's perceived as, quote, too liberal. They use that against Obama too, and then also bad on the border is their biggest thing. So that's part of why. Yeah. Well, as long as he's on board, I'm yeah. I know it's insincere, but again, VP's ceremonial.
All right, one last call of the day. Sorry, folks. A lot of people have been on hold. It's just been one of those week and a halves. Calling from a 928 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Is this me?
It's you. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
I am caller, and I'm calling from 928. I really only had a very quick question, and it has to do with almost the theme of your show. It's all conspiracy theory craziness. So I figured I'd just jump in. Didn't the Supreme Court make the President of the United States a king?
I mean, not a king, but they basically said that the president has immunity from criminal acts as long as they are official acts, and the definition of official acts are, we will tell you at a different time.
Right. It's going to have to be after Tanya Chutkin goes through the case, adjudicates it to figure out what is and is not official. So technically, the king of the country is in the air. But if that's true, they still also included that if the president were to commit some sort of treason, like go to his vice president and say, don't count the votes.
Right.
And there was some conspiracy that was in the background that would like create an alternate state of electors and, on and on. All of those things are still up in the air, but also that means that whoever is the president now is possible. It's possible that that person can do those things. So Joe Biden can look at Kamala Harris and say, don't count the votes on
but the problem
January
is
6th.
The problem is that Kamala Harris could be theoretically prosecuted.
That's true, but he cannot be, and since he cannot
Correct.
be, he can still just pardon her for treason, but still just pardon her.
I mean, I guess
So theoretically, I know, again,
you realize that
conspiracy theory was like,
Biden's not even alive.
You
He
got,
hasn't been alive.
you
for
got,
about
you
2
got
years.
Weinstein and what?
Biden hasn't been alive for 2 years. So, but the AI could do it, I guess.
Right, exactly. We're going to have the AI do it, but it would all be illegal. It would be a completely legal. The only way to prevent Joe Biden.
I mean, look, I don't want to be pedantic about this, but it's not legal. It doesn't make it legal. It just means that they're incapable of being held, being punished for it. Those are two different things. I know I'm being a little bit.
Right. It's been interpreted interpreted as legal.
Okay, so what's your point?
My point is that why does anyone think, well, especially on the right, I don't know why everyone on the left isn't going, holy crap, the first king of the country was not Donald Trump, it was Joe Biden, and now the next leader of the country, which will, let's hope it's Kamala Harris or somebody who, I don't know.
Okay, but what's the point? What's the point? You're saying like why doesn't he do something that's illegal and get away with it?
Oh, he could. Like my point is that all of these conspiracies don't point to that. Literally speaking, they can fix the election.
Yes, I get you.
All
I get
of
what
the
you're
things that
saying.
they said that they wouldn't do, they could do, and then people will say, no, he wouldn't do that. Joe Biden wouldn't do that. He's too good of a man. But yet, he's still a criminal. He's like Biden crime family,
I got you. All right. I appreciate the call. It is sort of funny that they are completely ignoring the fact that the president could get away with anything right now.
Yeah.
So they wouldn't have to be so delicate in what they're doing. Biden could just come out and go like, but
10 minutes ago, Mark Kelly, for all we know, Iran is funding the anti-Israel protests outside Congress today. Mark Kelly claps for Netanyahu, saying protesters may be Iran's useful idiots. So pro-act vote or not, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah,
go back to
that
Mars
guy.
or wherever the hell you're from.
Yeah, fuck that guy. No, Bashir, walls. That's what we're in. That's what we got to do.
Despicable. This is a confrontation that's going to have to happen in this party if Kamala wins or loses with people who support Israel.
yeah, I mean, you wonder if he's not doing that though to provide cover. So we'll see. I mean, if he's going out and voting for the PRO Act or endorsing the PRO Act, and on that same day he sort of makes a show of like how super Zionist he is, you wonder if he's not making these moves as a conscious decision to sort of make him more attractive to Harris, which would be just.
I want to make sure that's read as making him less attractive and poisoning her ability to win, say, at Michigan.
Yes, and also, this is why her small dollar haul hopefully can stave this off, right? Like, she can be less reliant and not, I mean, she has that AIPAC money that got transferred from Biden, but I guess she'd only gotten like 100,000 or something herself from AIPAC. I need to fact check that, so don't run to the bank with it. But no more AIPAC money for this campaign.
I don't
Honestly,
think I don't think on the national level that the issue is money as much as it is perceived. I mean, there may be some big donors, and I don't know if it's necessarily AIPAC. I'm sure there's some donors, but I think it's like just a perception. I think Biden thought this was going to be an attractive position, a helpful position to him. And I think hopefully Harris realizes like, no, like,
well, she doesn't need to go running to Haim Saban like he's apparently been doing with all those fundraisers, right? Like,
yeah, but I don't think that's why Biden was doing it. I think that's just sort of like an added bonus.
Fine. I'm just hoping. Right. But
the real question is, does Harris realize that a portion, and nobody can know for sure, but a portion of the enthusiasm for Harris is not just that she's not 81 years old, but that a portion of this, and we saw it with the uncommitted vote, mean, it's a real phenomenon.
Yeah.
And it is not just, you could look at that uncommitted vote and go like, okay, you spread it out across all the cohorts that could possibly vote for, the ticket. And, it's a little bit here, a little bit there. But this is a cohort of people who are a specific age, who are a specific demographic, that are the ones that are most likely to be out there knocking on doors and campaigning and volunteering for your campaign. And we will never know the answer, and hopefully we will never be in a position of knowing the answer. But I suspect that if she was to pick somebody like a Shapiro or like a Kelly after this instance, the number of volunteers she would have would drop. Not, I don't know if it would be precipitously or what, but, or the enthusiasm level. I mean, because these are the activist base, but we'll see. All right. I'm going to read the 3 IMs that we got to get out of here. Space Lenin. Hey, y'all, I'm part of the NEA group of educators for Palestine. We joined with the AFT group of the same name. We've done a lot to get NEA to sign on the letter demanding an end to aid to Israel. Please ask people to find us on Instagram and send a message to get involved.
What's the Instagram?
Well, they didn't put it. Usually you got to give the title of that. I remember doing an impeachment panel at the town hall with Conyers and Elizabeth Holtzman and Chris Hedges. And somebody came up to me and said, we're going to do a big protest in the subway station. Can you, but we're not going to say what subway station yet. Can you announce it on your radio? And I said, sure. What's the website? Oh, well, no, that's part of the problem too. Too many people being on the internet. And I'm like, well, how do I tell people where?
How will anyone attend?
My Mesa, what's your speculative deadline for Kamala to pick her VP? Well, I don't think she'll announce it before. Well, probably whenever the vote is. So I could be like the week of August 1st, right?
Oh God,
could be soon, within a week. All right, 2 more. Batty from Cincinnati. What do you think about the nickname Joe Good Biden? Okay. Progressive Dad. Gifted Hater on YouTube covered the Tim Pool skate park. It was a DIY skate park. When the local skaters were raising money, Tim offered $20,000. The skaters told him no thanks because they didn't want to be affiliated with him. He was enraged and bought the land for $1 million. That's why it's getting 1-star reviews. Skateboarders, including my 13-year-old, do not like Tim Pool. And the final IM of the day, Bullprog. Criticizing politicians is a necessary thing, but I can't imagine the misery of those who seem to be addicted to losing. Good point. Bradley, Matt, Emma, great job today. Folks, see you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the lie bar. But finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I get somewhere the choice was made.